It's your one-way ticket. Oh, that sounded terrible. It's your one-way ticket to midnight. The heavy metal song. But we'll get into that in a minute. That sounded like Mickey Mouse saying that. Anyway, which might be appropriate.
Which could be kind of, I was just going to say that.
Okay. Welcome everybody to Geeky Geezers. Ignore the first 10 seconds, please.
You can edit that out later, right?
Yeah. Well, YouTube won't let me, but maybe for Rumble. Yeah. How's everybody tonight? Who do we have in the chat? How you doing? This is my co-host. I'm your host, Agent Boomer. This is my co-host, PaPa Pacelli.
Hello. Hi.
What you sipping on?
Just Diet Dr. Pepper.
Okay. Cool. I got a Coke.
It's a work night.
I got a Coke.
Oh, the hard stuff, huh? Okay.
The hard stuff, yeah. The original taste. When Stranger Things had their third season, they did a brief re-release of New Coke. Did you know that?
I
did. Order a special.
I did.
And I tried it. Again, and it wasn't terrible.
Yeah, but it's also not great. It's certainly not as good as classic Coke. And I got to be honest with you, I think there was more to the marketing on that than I think people realize. I think that a lot of people, and I've heard a lot of other people say this too, it might have just been a marketing stunt, because Pepsi was always the choice of the new generation and, always, changing and improving and all this kind of stuff. And Coke was seen as more the conservative, traditional kind of thing. So it was like, well, we can't change because that's Pepsi's thing. So how do we emphasize our classicness? We'll say that we're changing, and when there's a big uproar, we'll change back. We'll call it classic Coke, and it'll, everyone will buy more of it then. And that's actually what happened.
Oh my goodness.
Their intent on it is speculative, but what actually happened, that's demonstrable. But the other thing that ended up happening was for years, you were able to get New Coke at like the dollar store. You could get like a 2-liter bottles of this New Coke, for $1 for a long time. And it was like, I wonder if that was the side benefit to them. Like, it was like, we can have our own off brand of cola,
Oh man.
I don't know. It was brilliant marketing, whether it was a screw up or not. It ended up being brilliant marketing.
That'll be the future. The rich will have the Coke Classic and won't be stuck with New Coke.
Right.
Okay. Anyway,
there you go.
Let me say hi to the chat. Auditor Dread, good evening. Good evening to you. Troy Pacelli, welcome. Let's see who else here. Come on, let's go down. D Penzek. Hello to Netter's Network. Hello, Netter. Good to see you. Hold on, let me go up. I think I'm having a boom.
David, you must be making the rounds tonight. I just saw you a little while ago over on Soundtracks with Birdman too. Unless you have like 2 different tabs up and you're trying to listen to 2 people at once.
I still have Birdman's tab up unless he stopped. Okay, no, he's done. Let me get out of here.
Okay.
He was nice enough not to go on at the same time as me. Not that I care. You go on when you have to.
There's only Daniel so Heron, many hours in the week,
Yes. Daniel Heron, welcome. Horizon Talker, welcome. Big Al, always a pleasure. We did a Tremors rewatch last night. Check out his channel if you'd like to hear us.
I had forgotten how much I enjoyed that film.
That is a great little monster movie and just a lot of fun. And I remember being a kid loving it, and I still love it today. So,
and don't forget the upside of watching those rewatches with us live. Now I'm streaming it, on a separate platform, so you can still watch the movie even if you don't have a physical copy, even though you should have a physical copy.
Auditor Dread, I'm watching the Batman video. Good stuff. Oh, that was from Friday night, right?
Yeah. Thanks so much. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was telling Troy before the stream, missed opportunity not casting Anthony Hopkins as the ventriloquist for Batman.
I agree.
That was a because he already basically played him in the movie Magic. So let me see. Horizon Talker, what are you saying here? Just finished recording a video on the legacy of Anita Sarkeesian. Her Tropes series turned 10 this year. Might be an interesting subject for you to tackle, Aged Boomer. For me, the Tropes versus Women thing was my introduction to what is known as the SJW. Yeah. That's when it started.
Yep.
It was when that got up, and I'm like, oh no, this is Dr. Frederick Wortham all over again. If you know, people who know comics may know that name. He's the one that attacked comics in the 1950s. And I'm like, oh, here we go. It's going to be another moral panic about video games. And no, let's I after her series was announced, I think it was 1 week later, Nintendo is censoring the DLC for Fire Emblem. That's the beach summer DLC where you can play the characters bikinis and swimsuits. And now that some of the artwork's been censored, and I knew it was tied directly to what she just did. I knew that
a lot of people have pointed out that it's like the pendulum has swung the other way. It used to be the conservative fundamentalists that were, trying to start moral outrage about things, and now it's become the so-called progressives, the regressives.
It's weird. What we have now too is that it went from media complaining about how politically incorrect all the media was, like back when she started her things and everything else, and now it's swung the other way where now you and I are complaining about the message being in everything, or at least seemingly being in everything. It's not always. Sometimes it's just the marketing. But D. Penzek, evening. Connie Cleary, welcome. I don't think I've seen you here before, but welcome to the chat.
Oh, hi, Connie.
Do you know who that is? Oh, okay. All right.
There was a comment there. David was saying picked up. Oh, NECA's Universal Monsters Ultimate Mummy this weekend, and you thought of me. Oh, well, that's cool. Hey, David, maybe do a video about it, because I'd kind of love to see that.
Cool.
Not necessarily the biggest NECA fan, although I do have a couple, especially their clothed figures, because that usually means that they got a license that Mego couldn't get, and so it's the only way I'm going to be able to get that particular figure. But yeah.
Oh, thanks to you boys. I found Santos Birdman tonight. It was my first time listening to a show. Yeah, he's a great guy. We usually do a stream every Wednesday, so sometimes he does like unboxing videos, which are fun to watch too. I won't be on there this week because it's Aged Boomer's mother's birthday that night, so I'm going to be taking the night off. But Big Al will be on with him, and they're going to be talking about doing a rewatch of some of their favorite Battlestar Galactica of the reboot series from Sci-Fi years ago. Yeah, do their 2 favorite episodes of that and talk about that on the stream. So
my biggest problem with Birdman is he makes us all look bad because he dresses up nice.
He does. He does.
We're all slobs by comparison. Well, especially you. I mean, you're streaming from your tractor trailer there.
Whatever. My tractor trailer, yeah. Most I have to report is I have a platinum God of War. Well, that's good for you. I don't think I've ever platinumed a game.
She thinks this tractor's sexy.
Yeah, your tractor's sexy.
Of course, yes. I don't think I've ever platinumed a game, which is why when you say I'm the gaming expert, well, when I have time to be. But
yeah,
that's where you get trophies or achievements, and you can, you get these little. It's kind of like how I used to have high scores back in the day. They came up with this thing where like you do a certain thing in the game, and like a little trophy appears.
Right.
It was funny in that Blizzard arcade collection. I got a trophy for. I guess all my characters died, and then suddenly it said Viking funeral because like one of your characters die, or you quit the game with one of your characters, and they do a Viking funeral for one of the dead Vikings, and then a thing popped up: Viking funeral achievement. Okay.
I know it's not your usual kind of game, but I was talking the other night about it. Did you have you ever seen the game The Last of Us?
I've heard of it. I've not played it myself. It was kind of a. I think I've heard it always seemed a little too grimdark for me, but
it is pretty grimdark. It is really, there are some really dark things in it, but it's that like zombie apocalypse
sort of thing. I know it's getting a TV series soon.
The first one. Yeah. Interestingly with, what's his name? The Mandalorian.
Yeah. So it's what I guess he's what.
Which is like, what are they going to cast? Are they always going to cast him as the surrogate father character? I mean, that's
probably
basically what. In fact, I saw a meme of Din Djarin holding Grogu, wearing a T-shirt saying "Mandalorian babysitting service" or something like that.
Oh, that's funny.
But yeah, no, and so after seeing a playthrough of that whole first game, I was like, wow, this is really good. And I remember hearing a bunch of dust up
Oh
about the
no.
second one. And I'm
People
like,
were
yeah, this was so
furious.
good. I could totally see it getting screwed up. I
People were
watched a
furious.
video.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched a video by a writer who was talking about it, not in terms of SJW content or any of that
Right.
kind
Right.
of
We
stuff,
got you. Got you.
but really, mapping out how the story goes. And I mean, you're a librarian, storytelling,
Yeah.
that usually you have build up to a denouement, and then you have the plateau, and then you have the resolution, right? And everything's supposed to build up to that denouement, right? Well, it can be a little more challenging in games because you're part of it and you make decisions as you go. But by and large, these storytelling games tend to be pretty railroady, and most people are just in it for the story anyway. But apparently they decided to do something in the second one where, oh, come on, this has been out for years. So there's no such thing as spoilers on this thing now. Apparently they kill off the character, the main character that you played in the first one early on. So the whole story becomes like a revenge, get revenge for him, playing the secondary character, which in and of itself isn't a problem, but the way they go about it is so stupid. You got to completely ignore everything that about the character to believe he'd be dumb enough to get himself killed in that particular way.
Yeah.
And then after playing, as the one character, you do this like stop, go back in time and play like the villain character. And now the villain character becomes your protagonist. And eventually you get to a point where you have to play as one fighting the other. And it totally divides the audience because, you're like, no, you're kind of trampling all over these characters. And I realized that this had such fundamental storytelling problems that the minor issues of making one of the characters gay and,
Right.
and killing off another character, it's like, okay, those things that I heard, some of the black pills, shouting SJW over and over and over again was nothing compared to how they really effed this up. So, but the reason I bring that up is because one of the common themes that we're always talking about here and on Fridays and so forth is this idea of destroying franchises. And this commenter that I saw talking about this said something that seems so simple, but so profound to me. He said, when you do something in a narrative thing and it's your own thing, it's your first story, you have a great deal of freedom. If you are telling a sequel, you have less freedom, period, full stop, because you are bound by the conventions that were created in the previous one. We're always talking about canon, right? But that's basically what this guy was talking about. In a narrative, you've created something. You've set the rules for your story, whether that's the way a character behaves, their personal outlook. And if you suddenly change that, if a conservative suddenly becomes liberal for no reason and makes a decision that's the complete opposite of what they've established themselves to do, you're kind of backhanding the audience, right? It's okay if they get killed because they were true to themselves and you kind of almost saw it coming, and yeah, there was no way story was going to go a different way. Yeah, that's terrible. But if they get killed just because, well, the plot just needs him to get killed, people get pissed. And honestly, that's what we're seeing in so much of our franchises. Anyway, wanted to share that with you because yeah.
I want to read a comment though. Last of Us is one of, if not the best mature video game survival zombie story. Think The Road, the one with Viggo Mortensen meets the best of The Walking Dead. But at its heart, it's a story about a father and daughter story. The show seems to already race swap Joel and his brother Tommy, Texans into Latinos. Not sure why. Now, it's interesting. The actor who's going to play him, what's his name again? Mandalorian actor.
He's Din Djarin to me. I don't know.
No, I know his name, but he was on Game of
Pedro
Thrones.
Pascal. That's
Pedro Pascal, because Pedro Pascal can play anybody. I mean, he in the one Kingsman movie, he actually played a Kentuckian American guy.
Well,
He can do both. But why are they doing that? It's probably because of the
Well,
to win points. That's probably why they're
here,
doing it. Not that
well,
I have a problem.
but here's the other thing too. Keep in mind, Texas has a great deal of Latin American community there. So your average Texan could very well be of
Yeah,
Latin descent.
true. So I
That
don't know. We'll
totally
see.
works.
Yeah, we'll see.
Um,
They could be changing other things besides that, but yeah, it could totally work. As you're right. That of course Texas just yeah.
but again, I don't think that's the bigger. My concern is now having seen the playthrough of the whole first game. What the hell are they going to do if they decide to continue on to the second one? I mean that's a no-win scenario, right? Because you're already going into a game that has fractured the
Well,
fan community. But then if you deviate from that, you're going to then alienate all the people that actually did like the game
Well,
and the way it
I
was.
will say this: the Walking Dead show deviated from the comics. Like people that got killed in the comics survived on the show, and vice versa. People that survived in the comics got killed in the show, and so it wasn't. They didn't do a straight up copy, so they may
Which
do the
of
same
course I would
with
totally be behind if I felt like, okay, this is a much better story. They improved nothing and they actually made it much, much worse. And that's what they generally do when they give up the convention of what they're supposed to be adapting and saying, I'm going to subvert expectations. I am going to make this my own. No, you egotistical bastard. You are going to translate someone else's work.
Okay, so
Speaking of translating someone else's
no,
work.
actually, but what I wanted to say first, though, let's before we get started,
Uh-huh.
you did mention that I was a librarian at the start of the stream. I am not a librarian. I often have to say I work at a library. I'm what's known as a library assistant, which doesn't
I
sound
thought
nearly as impressive, but I do want to make
for a
that
minute there, I thought
clarification.
you were going a different way with that. I
And as
work
I
at a
said,
library. I'm a janitor. No.
no, there's anything wrong with that either. But no, and I wanted to say that the person the person I donated my kidney to, the man, they kept saying, "Oh, I'm going to get librarian powers now," and I said, "I'm not a librarian. I have to read that." But speaking of kidney donors, maybe people were having some
Oh,
issues.
that's
I
right.
wanted to transition into just a little plug here. Maybe Troy, if you want to go ahead and
Sure. So for the past couple weeks, I've been talking about this on just about every stream that I'm on. It would really encourage me a great deal if you haven't already. You'll notice you might maybe I should just pin it again. Let me see if it's
it's on there.
Oh, there you go. And down in the description as well, I saw there is a Give Send Go to donate to Rambling Canuck. He is a fellow YouTuber, good guy. He's up in Canada. He was covering the trucker protest and whatnot, as well as he covers a lot of the pop cultural stuff that's going on. Does some deep dives, kind of like we do, and he does karaoke in the evenings. But he's got some serious health problems. Now, Canada's, very different from the U.S. His health care is pretty much covered by tax dollars up there. But because of his health situation, which involves waiting on a kidney for transplant, he's out of work. He's just barely getting by. He's got some situations with his son too, and his education that he's trying to cover. It's pretty rough, and the next couple months are going to be really difficult meeting his rent, meeting his bills, and so forth. So Mrs. Canuck started a Give Send Go, and a lot of us in the community, the PJ at Orville Nation, started a raffle with all kinds of really cool prizes for people that are into the Orville and Dark Matters. Some screen use props and costumes that were donated by the stars and the what's his name, the producer Seth MacFarlane.
Yeah, they were
and
getting
stuff
a lot
like
of
that.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but I didn't even know about that when I donated. I'm, that's not really the issue. But I did a video, you can find it over on my channel, where I actually did a little interview with Mrs. Canuck because she can get into the details a little bit more than I can. First, I didn't feel too comfortable telling someone else's business. And secondly, I didn't know as many of the details, obviously, as she did.
Right,
She's
right.
more intimately involved there. So maybe go check that out, hear it directly from her. All the links are there too. But if there's anything you can do, any couple $2 would be, something, and then share it out. Share out my video, share out this link on your social medias, whatever, anything you can do to help get the word out. Someone who's in serious need.
And he's good people. So
he is good people. Yeah.
Not that it, but we vouch for him.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right. So yeah, and I done it recently myself. Hopefully I'll get in that raffle. We'll see if anything happens. If not, that's fine too. But who knows? I may end up with something. We never know.
Yeah, and like I said, I always feel like the bigger thing is
the bigger thing is, of
treasure
course,
in
someone
heaven,
who needs the help. Yes, well, obviously,
or karma. What goes around comes around.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe one day you'll be the one in need.
And like I say, I have
out
some
to the
personal people with issues with that disease, and it's rough. So,
mm-hmm.
All right, but thank y'all for listening to us on this, and we're going to talk about.
Oh, we're going to go back and talk about the good old days. It's kind of funny that the title of this particular good old days is something that was kind of edgy or cutting edge back in our day. Now it's old timer stuff. Yeah, heavy metal.
Heavy metal. Now,
is that comic still around? That magazine, Heavy Metal?
It was for a bit. In fact, I could be wrong. I think Grant Morrison was doing a run on it. I could be wrong on that, but I think it's still in print, or at least it was for a while. I don't know if it still is, but they were a couple years ago. They were still making it.
So for you youngins who might not even know what heavy metal was, it was this magazine, big magazine style comic book. And it was, what do you call it when you got a bunch of short stories put together? It was like an anthology type thing.
An anthology type comic book. Yeah.
And it was very, it's what we started calling in the 90s for mature audiences,
Yes.
It was stories like you would see Conan or, like Lovecraft, that kind of thing. Sword and sorcery, fantasy,
science fiction,
big
horror,
sci-fi, exactly. A lot of horror,
like everything under the sun. Yeah.
When it came to the artwork, you went everywhere from goofy, silly comic book art to, pretty hyper realistic, stylized comics to sometimes you had some open boobies there. It was for mature readers. Absolutely.
And then they decided, I think the the National Lampoon magazine, right?
Mm-hmm.
They, I think, also owned the rights to distribute heavy metal. I think it started out as like a European comic magazine, and then they got the rights to bring it over here, and they published it under that imprint. And of course, correct me if I'm wrong, but let me just find the producer on this. I believe that the producer on this was Ivan Reitman. Yes, Ivan Reitman, who did a lot of the National Lampoons, like like I think didn't he work on the vacation movies, if I'm not mistaken?
Oh yeah, I think so.
He was involved in those. Yeah, so he got the rights to make a movie on this. Now I have to tell you, we were not in the information age when Troy and I were growing up.
True.
Granted, I would argue that he and I had better access to movies than generations that had come before, but heavy metal was kind of this forbidden mystery movie that had vanished. Now, I believe it came out, it was in 1981 it came out. I don't know if you saw it in the movie theaters when it came out. Or
no, I did not. I didn't see it until it came out on cable. Yeah, so it was in the 80s for me too. And, well, no, I don't want to take the wind out of your sails. Go on with your story.
No, I'm just saying that I'd only heard of it in passing. Maybe when I was 4, I asked my mom, take me to see that. And she's like, no, because it's not a kid's movie.
Right.
By any stretch of the imagination.
Honestly, it wasn't near as bad as some of the stuff in the magazine itself.
Yeah. Oh, South Park had a nice spoof on heavy metal with Kenny hallucinating seeing the Lady Warrior. I have to say, it would have been kind of cool if they had if Trey Parker Matt Stone had actually been in charge of doing a heavy metal remake. I
That would
heard
have been
lots of
cool.
people were in charge of that. I think that Robert Rodriguez was attached to do one at some point, and that didn't work out. And then I think. Oh, who was that one director that did Seven? He was going to do one as well, and it just didn't. They can never get it off the ground. But as far as the original movie went, I didn't see it till like high school, and it was on TNT of all places. So of course, all the good stuff's getting censored out
It
because it's
was
on regular TV.
it was right around the time that like VHS was starting to get popular.
Yeah,
And back then, again, as Boomer said, this was pre-internet, and everything you heard was whispers from your friends,
yep,
people at conventions, stuff like that. Rumors traveled a little bit slower, but they were much more powerful. Because you were getting them directly from someone you were talking to, not just, a
yeah,
Reddit post or something like that.
yeah,
One of the rumors, and there was two movies that were kind of legendary in my mind. Hadn't seen them. They're not available on VHS. They're not, they were at the theaters and now they're not. And,
right,
there's a lot of secretism about them, right?
yeah,
Why aren't they released? What's going on? One
uh-huh.
of them was Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yes,
And, I mean, that was the bootleg VHS to get was Rocky Horror Picture Show, right?
I remember when that finally got announced on VHS. That was a huge deal. I saw
It
the commercials
absolutely
for it.
was.
Yes,
And it turns out that it had nothing to do with the content or anything like that. As everyone was saying in the rumor mill, it was really just a licensing thing, which is exactly what happened with heavy metal. And it had nothing to do with the content, even though the content was, racy for its time. It was about the soundtrack.
yes,
The soundtrack had some of the biggest bands of the 80s, some great tracks of theirs, huge releases for them. There was
L-
what? There was
yeah,
Journey and there was
yes.
Blondie, and I don't remember who
I'll
all.
read them all. Sammy Hagar, Riggs, Devo,
Right.
Blue Oyster Cult, Cheap Trick, Don Felder, Donald Fagen, Nazareth. Let me see. Journey, as you said, Grand Funk Railroad, Black Sabbath, the Dio Black Sabbath, not the Ozzy, and Stevie Nicks.
Oh,
I
I
mean,
love
it
Stevie
had
Nicks.
it had an amazing soundtrack, and I believe that um, these were all owned by different record labels and companies, and it's like we're not paying that, and so it languished. Now, I
Yeah,
think what happened over time, I believe that Columbia Pictures merged with Columbia TriStar merged with Sony. Correct? Sony bought them,
I think so. Yeah.
and I think Sony also collected a lot of music labels, correct, under Sony Music. So
Right.
this is an example, maybe how I typically don't like companies buying everybody out, but this actually worked in this movie's favor because
Right.
now this movie could finally get a re-release, and
Exactly.
it got a remastering, got a brief release in theaters, I believe in '96. And yeah, it was it actually got a release in March 8th, 1986, taking in 550,000. Keep in mind this is just a brief theatrical run, and then it got a VHS release, and I remember thinking at the time, I think I was like 19 at the time, and I'm like, well, I've always heard of this movie. I'm going to buy the VHS. And I bought the
Yeah.
VHS, and they were also selling the soundtrack. They made a big deal about the soundtrack. 2 LPs on one CD. I remember seeing it
Right.
advertised, and I
Right.
picked
Right.
that up as well. And I was amazed by heavy metal. So I don't think we've talked much about the movie yet. It was an animated anthology for adults, or more realistically, probably preteen boys that should be watching this. But I think mentally that's almost what it was geared at, right?
Right. Right. Right.
And it's everything you would want to see as it had everything. It had blood, it had violence, it had boobs, it had I remember the poster. It was like a universe of awesome, good, and terrifying evil. I'm like, sign me up. This is what I want to see. And I must have watched that VHS that summer of '96 over and over and over again, probably 2 dozen times, because obsessed with that movie when I first saw it, because I like animated anthology movies in general, and that's definitely one of the best. And I guess I would classify it as a Canadian animated feature, because it was really a Canadian production. So, what did you think of it?
I thought it was absolutely brilliant. It was heavy metal. My first exposure to it was, and I've told a very similar story about this. There was a show. It was a very, very brief show on Nickelodeon, hosted by Leonard Nimoy, and it was mostly about film and special effects and prop making, stuff like that. And he had talked about a couple of animated projects. One of them was Rock and Rule.
I remember that episode.
That before.
Yeah.
And there was one where they talked about heavy metal. And, you know, it was just very documentary style. He's talking about this movie and so forth. And, you know, I was like, man, I'd love to see that. And that's what got it into my consciousness. And then it was years before I actually got around to seeing it. But what I loved was, just like the anthology of the stories in the magazine, you know, it's an anthology film with different artists doing different you know, drawing styles. And there is some great rotoscoping work. We've talked about rotoscoping when we talk about things like, you know, the
Lord of the Rings movie,
the Lord of the Rings cartoon, and, you know, a bunch of other things. But this one in particular, there's a character who's kind of famous from the magazines. I think her name is like Tarna or something like that.
Tarna,
she's like the warrior woman that rides the dragon or whatever.
Yeah, I was in love with Tarna. I'll admit that.
Yep. Anyone who played D&D back in those days, you know, at least knew what that character looked like.
Yeah.
But there was an actress that was, you know, she filmed the bar scene, and then she's putting on the armor and stuff. And it was I don't know. I saw some behind the scenes about it. It was
on
really,
the DVD
really good.
too. Yeah.
But apparently, I haven't seen this because I haven't gotten the DVD of it. But the behind the scenes reel of that footage is on the DVD Blu-ray. So I'm going to have to track that down and check that out. Yeah. But, you know, the other thing too was, you know, seeing it, you know, back in the late 80s, you know, I didn't know. I recognized one voice, John Candy.
Oh yeah,
you know, I was like, "Oh man, obvious. That's John Candy." But turns out some of the voices I didn't recognize right off were his SC alum, Joe Flaherty.
Flaherty.
Thank you. I could never pronounce that. Eugene Levy and Harold Ramis.
Yeah,
the Ghostbuster, and yeah. So I mean, it was kind of an all-star voice acting cast, you know.
It was Roger Bumpus too is here too. Oh, they have the whole cast in order. John Vernon was in this. Just like kind of a who's who of Canadian actors were doing the voices in this movie. And I just want to talk about each of the segments. So it starts out with the a shadow shall fall over the universe, and evil will grow in its path, and death shall come from the skies. And I'm like, what? And then you see this big green cylindrical jewel thing going across the screen, and then the heavy metal sign comes out. And I have the Blu-ray. You can listen to this in the original stereo or the 5.1, and just hearing it just crackle and go onto the screen is amazing. And then we see the space shuttle, and out of the space shuttle comes a convertible,
a Chevy
with an astronaut inside.
1959 Chevy Corvette. I can see it in my mind's eye. Yeah.
Remember when Elon Musk had his car in space? And
that's exactly what I thought about. Yes.
From heavy metal. I was excited. I was like, he did it.
Right around the same time, you also had that basically the same imagery, the car coming down from space or going up into space. I don't remember which, for the bumper for MTV. Do you remember that?
I remember that. I remember who was first with that.
I don't know. I don't recall. And again, my temporal vision gets a little skewed when it comes to heavy metal because, you know, again, you know, how long it took before I got to see it.
So yeah, so the astronaut, he comes out of the car, and he sees his young daughter, and she's like, "What did you bring me, Father?" And he's like, "You'll see." And he opens the box, and out comes the green jewel we saw
Yeah.
at the beginning, and completely disintegrates him, and he's all bones, and he's screaming in pain. And I'm like,
Yep.
ah! And then, of course, the green jewel says he's going to kill the little girl. But first, I want to tell you some stories about what
Yep.
I've done, and like
And
I
it
he's
was
and he- go
it
ahead.
was a brilliant thread that ties all the stories together. This
Yeah.
this Lochnar, I believe, is what
The
the
Lochnar, the
item is
sum of
called.
all evils, and he says, I've been across all worlds, all dimensions, all time, so you get to see stories that take place all over the place, and they usually have this green jewel as the center of the story. So first we get Harry Canyon, which is sort of like a Norse type story about a cabbie in future New York City.
Yep.
And there's a dame
Kind
in
of
it.
like the character from the Fifth Element.
Yeah, it kind of a similar feel to it. And I don't want to spoil these for you guys in case you decide to watch this movie. Check it out, definitely. But it's a nice it's a nice funny story because it has that kind of New York
Yeah.
feel to it, even though it's in the future. And I remember there's one scene where like this extraterrestrial is in there, and he's like, honest, I'm an American citizen, officer. And then Harry Canyon makes some comment about, oh, those illegal aliens, because he's
Exactly, literally aliens,
at
right?
that point. And it's just, I like what he says to ask the cop, I want to report a murder. And the cop says, what else is new? He says, you're going to let me in? Okay, it's going to be like $500 a day. And like they're charging
Yeah.
for the police service. And it's just, and anyway, so you get to see other stories, and some are darker in tone, some are funnier. Like you have Captain Stern, which looked like a Saturday morning cartoon gone wrong with like an evil Captain Kirk type, like
Yeah,
Captain
right.
Kirk is evil, and like he's on trial for all the horrible things he's done, and it's a funny little segment.
My favorite one though is the John Candy centered Den.
Den,
Nerdy kid gets
yes.
sucked into space, becomes like a muscular warrior.
It's like a muscle bound Conan type, and
Yeah,
they're nice bosomy woman that he keeps running into, and it's a funny segment. And of course,
funniest line in the whole movie, where he gets the loincloth to cover himself, because I didn't want to run around with my dork hanging out all the time.
It's funny. Oh man, and let's see, you had a segment with like a World War II style segment. With
Oh,
the ship getting shot
B-17,
at,
yeah.
And then he runs in, and then the creature, his dead crewmates turned into zombies and started attacking
Right.
him. That was creepy.
Ostensibly because of the Lochnar again, right?
Yeah. And then you had the one about the stoned aliens, and they want to and the robot, also played by John Candy, kidnaps one of the like an Earth woman, right after like a UN council where they declare there are no extraterrestrials, and it turns out the guy saying it is an alien robot, and he gets sucked up with this secretary woman, and the robot's making a play for her, and like
right. So beautiful, so dangerous.
So
right.
beautiful, so dangerous, and apparently she'll get with the robot, but she demands a Jewish wedding, which I thought.
Right, exactly.
I don't. I'm just. And then, of course, you have the big thread in the whole thing. You have Tarna at the end, which is just this wonderful, like Western fantasy style epic where it's like in the future, and the Lochnar corrupts all these men and turns them into these evil orc-like creatures, so they invade this city, and of course the elders do a message out to the last Terrakian, which is like the last of this race that are the defenders, I guess, of good, and then you get to see Tarna hacking people's heads off and starve, and this beautiful woman with white hair, with the sword and everything, and it's just.
Yep.
And there was a lost segment to this movie. Did you know that?
Yeah, it was like Neverwhere something.
Neverwhere, and it's a fascinating. It's done. I don't know why they cut it from the movie. People, they argued it was for time. I think maybe they thought it was too artsy for the movie. Where you get to see the Lochnar go into like the primordial ooze, and then you see all the evil through human history done in like this animation style that's like kind of rough, but it's a beautiful piece of animation, and they
Makes me
do
kind of think of like Fantasia or something like that.
kind of like that, yeah. And they do provide it on the DVD and the Blu-ray. You can see this segment, but I did, even on the VHS, they included it at the end after the credits. You could watch it after the credits. But I do wish that they would come out with a like an extended edition of the movie where they would reintegrate it back into the movie where it belongs. But it's cool that you still get it as an extra feature. I did want to tell you about some news though about this movie.
Okay.
It is getting a re-release on Blu-ray. For the first time ever, the animated sci-fi classic Heavy Metal will be available for fans in 4K Ultra HD. The groundbreaking film is getting a limited edition steelbook, which will include a 4K Ultra HD and a Blu-ray disc of Heavy Metal.
Wow.
So you get both, as well as the sequel Heavy Metal 2000 for the first time ever on Blu-ray. The Heavy Metal steelbook will be available for purchase starting on April 19th. So if that does interest you, Troy, you'll have another chance to get it.
Interesting.
I already have it on Blu-ray. I like my Blu-ray, but if this one's better, if it has more stuff in it, I may do a double dip. We'll see. Because I purchased this on VHS, purchased it on DVD, then got the Blu-ray later on, and now I'll probably end up getting the.
So you're kind of on the
4K.
fence about whether or not you like this Heavy Metal thing, huh?
I love this. I have the poster. I don't have it up right now, but before I had my current posters in my room, I used to have I had the re-release 1990s poster for Heavy Metal. When they re-released it in theaters, I had that poster, and next to it I had a poster for Lucio Fulci's The Beyond, which oddly enough they were both 1981 movies, and they both got re-released in 96, and these were the re-release posters for both. So that's kind of interesting that they both came out the same year, and they got re-released the same year. They're both cult movies that got released the same year later on. Anyway, I've rambled about this long enough. Does Chad have anything to say about Heavy Metal?
No, I think we said it all.
This is what you had before anime, and I know that Carl Masek wrote the a book on Heavy Metal and did the audio commentary on the Blu-ray and DVD. And he's, of course, known for bringing stuff like Robotech and Akira over to the United States back in the 80s. But he was fascinated by Heavy Metal when it came out so much that he demanded he write the book about the making of the movie. And I wish I had a copy of that book. They did do a re-release of it when they got re-released on VHS, and I should have picked it up then, but I didn't. So, but never know. Maybe
Might there be a copy of it somewhere in the library system?
I should look that up. You never know.
There you go. You can
did Heavy Metal influence Red Sonja? I don't know, because I think Red Sonja was also a comic. I'll say this: the popularity of both probably came from the same period, that 1970s, when people were getting into the barbarian stuff and the Robert E. Howard style fantasy stuff. I'm sure.
Yeah, those comics kind of ran in parallel.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was, and I don't know this for certain. You might know better than I do, even though I did buy some Heavy Metal comics. Didn't they have like some Conan stories in Heavy Metal?
I don't know. I don't know as much about the comic as I'd like. Because apparently Tarna was an original character created for the movie. And I don't think she was ever featured in the magazine until I think recently. I think they did something with Tarna in recent years. But I know for a while she was just an exclusive character for the movie, whereas the other characters were all taken from the comics.
Yeah.
And it's just a great classic 80s movie. Some people called it like the last gasp of the 1970s, with a lot of the bawdiness in it. Like let's be honest with you, you have what is it? You have the two aliens wanting to have some plutonium Nyborg, and and it looks like cocaine, and they're snorting it up. And the one has a nose on his head, so he's leaning down to snort it up. It's good stuff. And the score of the movie was done by Elmer Bernstein, who did the score for the Ten Commandments. Isn't that interesting? Okay. And I do own the score to that as well, and on CD. And the CD of that, when you open it up, it looks like the Lochnar inside, because the spherical shape. Anyway, do you have anything?
We had also talked about the fact that there was a lot of problems with the licensing on the music.
Oh yeah.
There is one song that doesn't appear on your soundtrack.
Through Being Cool.
Through Being Cool by Devo, right?
Yes, it is not on the soundtrack. I had to buy the Best of Devo to get Through Being Cool. I had purchased other albums. Apparently there's like some incidental musical numbers that Black Sabbath did that were like the lead up to the Barbarian Attack, and they're on one of the Black Sabbath albums, but they're not. It isn't on any of the heavy metal albums. So I bought that. There was and who did the Psychic Wars song? Give me 1 second. I think it's Blue Oyster Cult had they actually, I think they wrote a score just about Tarna, and they meant it to be included in the movie, but then the company included their other song. I think the Psychic War song. So instead, but the Tarna song is still on one of their albums, so you can still listen to it.
So it sounds to me like you did the kind of thing I used to do. There's a soundtrack that you want, but it's not available. So you track down all the individual parts, put together your own album, and there you go.
Yeah. And in defense, they did pretty good with both of those soundtrack releases. There's a lot of good stuff on there, but it's just it's not super complete. And I'm that obsessed with this movie. I'd love for them to do another one. Yeah. David Fincher, he was the one that directed 7. He was originally attached to do a heavy metal remake. So was Robert Rodriguez. This thing has passed around. I think M. Night Shyamalan might have been interested in doing it as well. I don't know if we'll ever see a heavy metal remake. I don't even know if we need a remake, just do new stories that we didn't see in the last movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to see it at this point, though, considering the age we live in. It's not very PC. It's problematic on a whole bunch of levels, but
that should be all you need to know. It's not PC, so it's probably going to be good.
Wonderful film coming out on 4K Blu-ray, and it also includes regular Blu-ray. If you don't have 4K player, you still get the regular Blu-ray with it. And comes with Heavy Metal 2000, which I don't believe has been released on Blu-ray, which I saw. It's all right. Didn't like it as much as the original, though, because it's like a feature story, but it wasn't bad.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on. We have to talk about delightful Disney, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bob Chapek's week. This is a long article. I have cut parts out of it as much as I can, but if I'm going on too long, just scream at me. All right.
Yeah,
I'll start reading if I pass out first, because this article went on forever, and I tried cutting it down to the essentials. Maybe I won't talk about the replacement, but Disney had a bit of a week this week. Some of you may have heard in the news.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Chapek and Bob Iger had a falling out. They rarely talk, and a rift looms over Disney's future. I'm starting to wonder if Disney is just too big for its own good.
There could be something there.
I don't know, because it's almost sounding like this is becoming too much to manage. Okay, from April 12th. Oh, okay. April 12th, 2020, the day that former CEO Bob Iger's relationship with his handpicked successor, current Disney CEO Bob Chapek, began to fall apart. Ben Smith, keep in mind, I'm pulling from this story. I'm not reading the entire thing verbatim,
right,
because it's long. Okay, but this was the day current CEOs Bob Chapek, the relationship between him and Bob Iger fell apart. Ben Smith published a story after reaching Iger by email. He reported Iger wasn't going to turn Chapek to the wolves as a brand new CEO while the world was falling apart. Remember, this was the early days of the pandemic. Iger told Smith he would stick around to help run the company. A crisis of this magnitude and its impact on Disney would necessarily result in my actively helping Bob Chapek and the company contend with it, particularly since I ran the company for 15 years, Iger said in his email.
Some would say ran it into the ground.
Chapek was furious when he saw the story, according to 3 people familiar with the matter. He had not expressed a need or desire for extra help. He wasn't looking for a white knight. Iger had postponed his retirement as CEO 3 times already. Chapek felt he was essentially doing it again, leaving him as a hapless second banana. According to people familiar with his thoughts, Chapek was already reporting to Iger, the board's chairman, anyway. The Disney board had little interest in starting a brawl, especially given the state of the company and the world, the people said. 3 days after Smith's story was published, Disney accelerated its timeline and named Chapek to its board. It was a turning point moment, said one of the people familiar with Chapek's reaction to Iger's interview with Smith. Now, we've been covering this stuff for months now. So
right. One of the things we pointed out is how Iger totally has made Disney his own personal, pulpit, for his ideologies and everything. He was far more interested in pushing his own agendas, preparing himself for a White House run. And he was pretty upfront about that. I'm not even, talking rumors. I'm talking
So he had stated that. I think he stated interest in that.
And it became very clear to the shareholders of Disney that he put that priority above making profit. And that's a problem for any company. I don't care what company it is. And that's why they brought in Chapek. That's why Arnold is there now. So, let's be very clear about what's going on here. Not to mention the Forbes article and all the other articles that we've talked about, calling out Disney and the situation and so forth.
Right. So going on, since that incident, Iger and Chapek haven't been able to mend their relationship, according to about a dozen people familiar with the matter who spoke with CNBC for this story. People asked to remain anonymous because the relationship and discussions about it are private. In the months that followed, Chapek began making key decisions about Disney's future, including a dramatic reorganization of the company and outing actress Scarlett Johansson's salary following a dispute over Marvel movie Black Widow. With Iger's input, internal messages about business strategy from both men would sometimes conflict, and it became clear the executives weren't speaking with one voice, several people noted. While much of the public narrative has centered around Iger's long goodbye, he departed as chairman in January. Chapek 61 has actually been firmly in control of Disney for more than 18 months. Normal times would have allowed Iger and Chapek to work more closely. Instead, the two executives barely spoke to each other. Chapek has a small circle of close confidence with whom he makes major decisions. Longtime right-hand man Kareem Daniel, Chief of Staff Arthur Bachner, and to some degree Chief Financial Officer Christine McCarthy, whom Iger promoted to the role in 2015, according to people familiar with the matter. Iger hasn't been part of that circle.
And there's a reason for that, right? He doesn't have an official position in Disney anymore. He really has no business speaking on this. He is now nobody. Okay. When he talks about, the decisions that Disney is making, that is no different than all these people at these award ceremonies, these paid pretenders coming and talking about politics. Okay. It's none of their business. They're not experts anymore, any more than you are. And I'm sorry, his lack of success speaks for itself. But be that as it may, he's not in those meetings anymore to know what's going on at Disney anymore. So he has nothing to talk about.
Iger is like crabs. He just needs to go away. Deep ends, like funny.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it, David.
Iger thought he had a legacy at Disney, and he thinks it's getting undercut. He can't have that. His legacy is something that he's counting on. Yeah, let me go back. Iger shadow.
Well, here's the problem with that logic, right? You set up your own legacy, and it should speak for itself. Okay, what happens after you leave has nothing to do with you. Okay, what it actually does is it underscores how badly you screwed up and how badly they need to fix things. We talked for years about the wars behind the scenes at Lucasfilm. Well, this is a war that's clearly, and this is public. This isn't rumor. This isn't speculation. This is very clearly going on in the headlines of these trades of CNBC and Yahoo and Deadline.
Now,
right?
It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting that this is CNBC because I kind of feel the article is sort of leaning more in the direction of Iger on this. You can tell by reading the article of it, but I think they are trying to their best ability.
They're doing the best they can with what they have to work with. But the fact is, there's a reason he's out.
Yeah. Iger's shadow. Chapek's decision to move away from Iger showed chutzpah, but it also put him on an island against a Disney icon who also happened to be chairman of his company and a large shareholder. He also hasn't been able to benefit from the myriad relationships Iger developed from decades at Disney. Anyone succeeding Iger, who had been Disney CEO since 2005, was going to have a difficult time filling his shoes. Iger was generally beloved by Hollywood and highly respected as a CEO, particularly after orchestrating a series of intellectual property acquisitions of Pixar, Marvel,
Mhm.
and Lucasfilm, which will likely go down in media history as the 3 smartest deals ever. Iger, 71, has even flirted with running for president of the United States.
Yeah, that ain't gonna happen now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Chap-
he's gonna have to win a primary first, and I don't see that happening.
be funny if he would run in the Republican ticket. I'm just kidding.
Well, you know, with the way the Democrat or the Republican Party has been going lately, it would be par for the course.
Anyway, Chapek, meanwhile, has a harder exterior and at times, according to colleagues, struggles with emotional intelligence, which happens to be Iger's strength. I love those buzzwords, emotional intelligence. Okay, the differences between the executives' leadership styles have come to light quickly in Chapek's tenure. Disney's public spat last year with Johansson over compensation after Black Widow streamed on Disney Plus at the same time it hit theaters during the pandemic embarrassed Iger, who prided himself on smooth relationships with A-list staff. While the controversy happened under Chapek's watch as CEO, Iger was still chairman and working with creative talent. This month, Chapek's public acknowledgement that he let Disney employees down by not fighting harder against Florida's quote-unquote "don't say gay" legislation has been another reminder to Iger loyalists that Disney's brand may be at risk with Chapek at the helm. Weeks before, Iger took a public stance against the legislation.
Yeah, this is clearly, strip everything else away from this. This is clearly a Bob Chapek hit piece, and it is.
Oh, yeah.
It's pushed by the loyalists to Iger, but
It's giving us information, though.
Oh yeah, but keep in mind that part of the war going on at Disney is, the Arnold, Suzanne Arnold and Bob Chapek are basically slowly getting rid of people that were Bob Iger loyalists and replacing them with their own people. We've been bringing you, the articles about the people in different places that are being replaced, and who they are and where they're coming from, and there's a lot of analysts that are looking at Disney saying, "Yep, this whole Florida thing and the walkout and all that does is tell them exactly who they need to pay attention to and plan to get rid of."
Yeah. In fact, going on to our centralizing Disney leadership in October 2020, about 8 months after he took over CEO, Chapek announced Disney was strategically reorganizing its media and entertainment businesses. This was Disney's second major reorganization in less than 3 years. The key part of the announcement was the following: the new media entertainment distribution group will be responsible for all monetization of content, both distribution and ad sales, and will oversee operations of the company's streaming services. It will also have sole P&L accountability for Disney's media and entertainment businesses. Those two sentences upended how Disney had done business for decades. The change gave Kareem Daniel, the leader of the new media and entertainment distribution group called DMED internally, one of the most important jobs in the history of media. The decision was instantly polarizing, leading to a burst of internal frustration among some veteran Disney employees who no longer controlled the budget of their divisions, according to people familiar with the matter. Chapek wants to streamline Disney so content decisions across distribution platforms can be made in synchrony. Instead of division heads running their own fiefdoms, Chapek and Daniel can steer Disney by controlling the budgets of each group and deciding where content ends up, streaming or cable or broadcast or movie theaters. Executives can then focus on making content or selling ads or building streaming technology with direction from Chapek and Daniel. Historically, the heads of Disney TV or ESPN or Hulu or film would run their entire businesses. Conceptually, Chapek's idea actually isn't all that different from what Iger had begun to put in place with the reorganization of Disney Plus. In early 2018, Iger met with Robert Kinsey, chief business officer at Google's YouTube, according to people familiar with the meeting. Before Google, Kinsey had worked for 7 years at Netflix, overseeing content partnerships. If Disney wanted investors to see its burgeoning streaming service as the growth engine in its digital first world, Iger realized he needed to centralize power at Disney Plus. According to two people familiar with the meeting, Iger urgently asked then Disney head of strategy Kevin Mayer to return from the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas so Iger could show him the new organizational structure, which he drew on a whiteboard in front of Meyer. Meyer would become the head of Disney's new direct-consumer unit in charge of the company's streaming platforms, Disney+, Hulu, and ESPN. Disney officially reorganized in March 2018. Power struggles followed. Meyer and Disney TV studio head Peter Rice fought about who had the authority to decide which shows aired on Disney+. Rice's principal issue was that content executives could no longer have direct conversations with Hollywood talent and tell them whether Disney would make their show or not. Rice feared losing green light power, which would affect Disney's relationship with Hollywood. If studio executives didn't have the power to approve projects, they quickly lose credibility with creators who would want to speak with the people at Disney who possess that authority. Iger had to solve the disputes by making controlled decisions on the fly. Meyer won the main argument. He would have green light power for Disney+. Meyer left Disney in 2020 to become TikTok CEO months after Iger chose Chapek as CEO. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Chapek decided to reverse Iger's decision about having green lighting authority rest with the head of the streaming services. He gave that power back to the content heads who have more money than ever before to make programming. Disney plans to spend a record $33 billion on content for fiscal 2022. That's largely pleased Disney's content leaders who can now tell creators directly whether Disney will work with them, according to people familiar with the matter. But with Daniel getting P&L control, long-term Disney executives also lost the ability to run the businesses of their own divisions. Some creative leaders didn't mind, preferring to focus on making content rather than selling advertising or working on wholesale distribution agreements with pay TV producers. Others didn't appreciate the loss over control of their budgets. Okay. Kelly Campbell's decision to leave her job running Hulu to lead NBC Universal's Peacock in October was at least partially motivated by her desire to have more control over her business than what Disney allowed her, according to a person familiar with her thinking. This month, Disney put its new Pixar movie, Turning Red, directly on Disney Plus instead of in theaters first. That decision would have taken months under Iger's structure, but with division heads flexing their power and knowledge of the market, according to 3 people who participated in discussions. Instead, the debate took weeks, with Pixar's executives ultimately agreeing that the movie should go to Disney Plus first. The people said Turning Red is the #1 film premiere on Disney Plus globally to date, based on number of hours watched in the first 3 days. As with any corporate reorganization, the proof will be in the results. Disney has a target of 230 million to 260 million global Disney Plus subscribers by the end of 2024, compared with 130 million Disney Plus subscribers today. If Disney can get there, Chapek and Daniel can claim success, assuming they revive the company's shares, which have fallen about 30% in the past 52 weeks, even as crowds return to Disney's theme parks around the world. Breathe. Okay. And there's a section on Kareem Daniel. I'm going to get into it, but he actually is. They made a point too that he is kind of the new star over there. So
yep.
Yeah, Daniel is a polar. Yeah, so go ahead.
So what we basically have here is, again, the natural transition from one administration to another. And you always have to be analytical and say, well, is this thing that we're seeing here, is this something you could blame on the current administration, or is this something that started under the previous administration, has basically been a time bomb for this administration, And we're seeing more and more stuff that was greenlit by, if not by Iger himself, then by his cronies, people that he put in place, that Chapek has to then deal with. Once you've come this far with a project, like, okay, for example, this Red Panda or whatever.
Red Panda. That's not what it's called.
Whatever.
Turning Red.
Okay, Turning Red. Yeah, that's a much better title, especially these days, right? I mean, that nobody even talks about that, but there's some implications there too. But there's some serious problems that people have had with this film, and it has nothing to do with the friggin' marketing. Okay, so yeah, Pixar is not doing real well right now. Then you get into the whole Buzz Lightyear thing and all this kind of stuff.
Yes.
And look, I mean, all the analysts are saying, get woke, go broke. It is an absolute truism. This is not what audiences want. They don't want this in their cartoons. They don't want this in their family-friendly, entertainment. And yet Iger pushed it and pushed it and pushed it. And he put all these, diversity hires in place to make sure it was perpetuated. Disney has to dig themselves out of this friggin' hole. Okay. And it doesn't help that the mainstream media, wants to vilify the guy who's trying to fix things.
So let's go to Yahoo. Yeah, this Yahoo article. This kind of carries on from this article. There's actually a lot of repeated stuff, so I cut that out so we don't have to read it again. But Disney chief, this is the past week's thing that happened with Pixar. Disney chief executive Bob Chapek is facing a roller coaster week with scheduled staff walkouts coming hot on the back of revelations surrounding the breakdown of his relationship with former mentor and legendary CEO Bob Iger. Chapek has faced many internal blowback over an insufficient response to the quote-unquote "Don't Say Gay" bill, potential legislation that would prohibit classroom discussion of sexual orientation on gender identity in Florida's primary schools, and that President Joe Biden described as quote-unquote hateful. And I have heard that this legislation was more about having transparency of what kids grades 1 through 3 are taught in the classroom, so that the parents know what the kids are being taught. That's what I heard that bill was actually all about. But feelings don't care about facts. Anyway, disgruntled staff held brief walkouts last week with a quote-unquote full-day walkout scheduled for Tuesday, while a site called whereischapek.com has amassed over 200 anonymous testimonials from employees expressing disapproval over Disney's reaction to the Florida law. Fans online are also talking boycotts. But the outcry only scratches the surface of the turmoil inside the House of Mouse, according to a new report by CNBC, which I was just reading from. Ex-CEO Iger, who successfully led Disney for 15 years before handing the reins to Chapek, has seen his relationship fall apart with his hand-picked successor, leading to awkward tensions, staff complaints, and power struggles. Iger, once named Hollywood's nicest CEO by the New York Times, has been notably separated in conversations with his former protege and rarely speaks to Chapek on Disney's decisions. That brought into question what the future entertainment powerhouse will look like going forward, with Chapek's contract ending early next year.
I do want to interrupt you on one thing.
Yeah.
I want to highlight something.
Go ahead.
Talked a lot about, the nice boss and the relationships and all this kind of stuff. This whole article and all of these issues brought up completely undermine the fact that this is a business. This is what everyone seems to friggin' forget. And that's the whole issue in topic here, right? Where a business stands on a law that has nothing to do with their business, it's friggin' ridiculous, right? It is not Disney's place to make a stand on this either way. They should say nothing about it. And when it comes to political donations by Disney, just like every other company, they donate to both political parties because that's how business is done and that's how politics is done. You don't, what do they say? Don't hate the player, hate the game. Feel free to bitch and moan all you want about, political donations and lobbying and all that kind of stuff. But, taking it out on Disney in particular is freaking ridiculous. The fact is, they're taking the appropriate business stance. It's none of our business. We don't care. We're not making a comment about it. We have absolutely no official opinion. Well, and if you don't like that, I'm sorry, employees of Disney, you don't get to dictate to the company beyond unless you own stock, and as a stockholder, you get a vote. That's all the say you get in a business, okay? You don't own stock, you just work there, then shut up and color inside the lines. That's all you should be doing. You don't like it, there's the door.
But it moves on into this next part of the article, which in some ways is almost I think there was a backpedal, which was a big mistake here. Don't say gay firestorm.
Yeah.
Tensions with the Disney camp have been further heightened over the Don't Say Gay bill, with staff reportedly voicing their dissatisfaction directly to Iger. After the initial outcry from employees and fans, Chapek came out and apologized for his mute stance on the bill. Speaking to you, reading your messages, and meeting with you have helped me better understand how painful our silence was, Chapek said. It is clear that this is not just an issue about a bill in Florida, but instead yet another challenge to basic human rights. Basic human rights. You needed me to be a stronger ally in the fight for equal rights, and I let you down. I am sorry.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
a big problem. You do not apologize. When you are right, you never apologize, because as soon as
because
you do, you entirely undermine your entire argument.
this is
Let's be very clear here. We say this a lot, but I don't think anyone actually takes the time to bring the receipts, okay? Nowhere in this bill does it say anything about being gay, or you can't say gay, or anything like that. But everyone that brings that up says read the bill. I'm going to read the relevant lines to you. Lines 97 through 101.
mhm.
Classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in kindergarten through grade 3, or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards. Now, keep in mind, they're not saying you can't talk about being gay. You can't talk about transitioning. They are saying you cannot talk about sexual orientation or gender identity at all. You should not be, you know, this should not be a radical concept. You should not be talking about sex with kids kindergarten to grade 3. A big
Right.
shock.
Below 10, yeah, age 10, I assume, yeah. I heard Midnight said too, they were saying, though, that this was really meant to be a transparency bill about so parents would know what was being taught. That was
Yeah.
the impression I had gotten. But it looks like there is some specifics in the bill. So, but still, this is nothing out. Even Bill Maher thought, this is really not the hill to die on, and he's left. He's like, come on, let
Yeah,
this, because he
and
wasn't
keep in mind,
understanding what the outcry was over this.
it's easy because this is what's in the media, but keep in mind, the actual name of the bill is the Parental Rights in Education. Now, if we've learned anything from the past 2 years, and we're truly intellectually honest about it, the past 2 years, with a lot of kids being, remoting in, parents have gotten to see a lot of what's being taught to their kids. Their eyes are getting open, and they're getting pissed about it.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but parents have every right to disagree and say, no, I don't want my kids learning that, because those parents will go and vote,
Yeah, we'll see.
and,
Yeah.
ultimately, if I'm going to be working from home and my kids are going to be remoting to school, then why am I even sending them to those classes? I can homeschool them if we're going to be doing it remote anyway.
I'll be blunt. I think in some ways this is the governor trying to save public education because he knows people are getting angry. Parents are getting angry.
And that is the biggest problem, because, again, most teachers in public education would agree with that. They don't want to lose their jobs. They don't want to see kids getting pulled out and homeschooled.
Right.
But it's the activists. Again, it's the activists, the ones that don't care about the money. They care about ideology.
I have a question, though. Was all this activism, though, on this particular issue brought about in part to attack Bob Chapek, or was it already there and then it just got used later on? Because was there this outrage until they figured it could be used? I almost feel like this is an orchestrated plan against Chapek. Now maybe I'm reaching here, but
no, I think that what it is whenever you are waging a war, you look for what's going on. Okay, I think back to my time in dinner theater. I played in The Music Man, and there's this whole bit where the traveling salesman Harold Hill, in order to get people, you have to, if you're selling something, there's got to be a need. So you got to drum up a need. So he goes in and he says to his Confederate in the town, he's like, okay, what's new in town that we can demonize as the evil? Why does this town need a boys band? Well, we need the boys in this to keep them focused on something pure and wholesome, because what are the kids getting into? Well, nothing really. I mean, there's a new pool hall. Pool. Pool is sinful, and it's a good place for them to hang out and drink and, read dirty magazines. And okay, and he does this whole, gets everyone whipped up about this. It's the exact same thing. Okay, we want to, find some way to demonize Bob Chapek. What is Disney saying on this polarized political situation? Well, they're not saying anything. Okay, we'll turn that into an evil.
Yeah.
They're not taking a stance, therefore they don't support it, and they're evil. And who is the loudest lobby? The LGBT community.
Yep. And let me read this next paragraph.
And one other thing I wanted to point out, when I talk about the LGBT community, I'm talking about these activists, which are a very small minority within the true LGBT community, because every person in the gay community that I know is like, I really don't know. No, I want to keep my personal life personal. I want to be open with the people I want to be open with.
Yeah.
I don't want kids being taught any of this stuff. I don't want any of this happening. I don't want to be part of these politics. This is all ridiculous.
Yes, well, we're living in ridiculous.
Yes, we are.
We were living in ridiculous times. Now they're
honestly
scary times,
all you have to do is pay close attention to politics and see how many of the gay community are starting to go conservative, the log cabin Republicans, so to speak, and look at how much of the black community is Brexiting away from the Democratic Party. I will not, be continually put down by, these white saviors anymore.
There was a response to this Chapek apology, though. LGBTQIA plus workers at the company issued a response to the apology, saying in an open letter, "While we certainly appreciate Bob Chapek's apology note, there is still more work to be done." That's not a good response to that.
Nope. That is not accepting.
That we're not accepting the apology. Yeah. You have to do more, Mr. Chapek.
Translation: not good enough.
Not good enough. Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it never will be enough.
It'll be enough when he's out of there. That's what he needs to realize. I know Stephanie Janicek was talking a lot about this week. I think I got her in one of the chats while she was doing one of her things, and I kept thinking someone close to Chapek told him to apologize, and that I can't imagine people in 2022 in levels of power are this naive about reading this situation. And I'm thinking somebody gave him some very bad advice on purpose. She didn't think so. I think it was just the board. But then I think, is Mr. Iger still part of the board? I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
Well, I'm sure he owns stock in Disney. That's true. But again, he only has as much say as his stocks give him, right? And I doubt he owns more stocks than,
This feels like a trap.
Yeah.
As Adam Akbar would say. Anyway, prior to the apology, divisions within Disney's had taken their own actions against the bill, a deviation from Iger's style of communication, where most of Disney's stances on political and social issues would come directly from him, which, again, you said that got the investors upset. Last Tuesday, Marvel Studios, which Disney acquired in 2009, wrote on its Twitter account, "We strongly denounce any and all legislation that infringes on basic human rights of the LGBTQIA plus community. Lucasfilm, the studio making Star Wars franchise, which Disney acquired in 2012, posted similar messages on its Instagram denouncing the Florida bill and similar measures in Texas and Idaho. For those wondering if Disney's former chief executive would have done better, he already did, tweeting on February 25th, almost a month before the controversy began. Several longtime Disney employees said Chapek's handling of the situation led to the worst week ever at the company, according to a report by Deadline. Okay. So I don't know. Do you think Iger was involved in any of this on some level?
Oh, absolutely. Just commenting on it, he's involved.
Controversial relocation plan in July 2021. Chapek decided to move 2,000 of its Imagineers, group of engineers and designers working on Disney's theme parks from Southern California to a new corporate complex in Orlando, Florida. The move was reportedly made to centralize park operations, take advantage of the lucrative state tax credits. Disney could get an estimated $570 million on tax breaks for over 20 years, according to the Wall Street Journal, but led to some of the Imagineers coining the nickname Bob Paycheck. Disney gave employees a December 2024 deadline to make a cross-country switch, and there have been reports that if employees do not move down south, they may have to forfeit their severance. After the Don't Say Gay bill controversy began, one employee whose division is moving to Florida wrote on a where'schapek.com, I guess that's a site attacking Chapek, that they were being asked to relocate our families to a state that does not promote equality or support basic human rights. Really? Disney is trying to quell all internal uproar by hosting a March 21st town hall meeting to discuss the subject with employees. I wonder how that went. Ultimately, though, Chapek's future will be decided on how his business and leadership strategy fares, and so far, he's kept the investors happy. So what do you think?
You can't hear my eyes rolling.
Okay, and of course, this one article, I'm not going to spend too much more time on this. We've been talking about this for a while. I was horrified at the length of that one. You don't know how much I cut out of it when I was, and I'm like, it's still too long. I guess I could summarize, but it's Clown World. Yes, it is.
It absolutely is.
And apparently, we may be getting food shortages at some point this year, if I'm to believe certain commander-in-chiefs.
But that's not his fault. That's let's blame it on the Russians. Blame everything on the Russians. It's all the Russians' fault.
Disney staffers take to the streets and social media and walk out over company's reaction to Don't Say Gay bill.
This is so funny. This one turned out to be quite hysterical, yes.
The planned full-day walkout at Disney today over the company's fumbled response to Florida's discriminatory Don't Say Gay bill has seen an outpouring of support from the LGBTQ plus community, from some leading divisions in the House of Mouse Empire, as well as from staffers themselves. According to sources on the Burbank lot early this morning, there weren't any protesters gathering outside the Alameda Avenue gate yet. Just some cameraman and other media. This turned into a calculated walkout around 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Instead of protesting in front of the student gate on Alameda Avenue, under 100 staffers headed over to Betty Davis picnic area nearby by 11 a.m. It was crickets in front of the Burbank gate with studio security, clueless that a protest ever occurred. The road closures on nearby Ski Stone pertained not to a protest, but an actual location production shoot going on.
What was so funny was, as this was going down, Cameron Pasha was talking about it on his Patreon, and he put out, exactly that, that it was this walkout was like one guy. There was more media there than, actual people walking out. Some of the people that walked out in Burbank were on their lunch hour, and they just came out and walked around the complex and then went back in afterwards. Update from Cameron Pasha. Our Disney insider friend just wrote me to point out that Deadline has been forced to update its headline to add no protesters at Burbank gates. He called the embarrassment of the anti-Chapek trade a thing of beauty. Update number 2. Deadline quickly changed its headline to say staffers take to streets and social media to hide the fact that the protesters didn't bother to show up as expected at the Disney gates. But I have screenshots of the original headlines attached here for all posterity. It's funny because, we live in this electronic age where, a headline comes out just like a tweet goes out and you're like, oh, got to retract that, got to change that. Let's see if we can hide it. Well, no, people have already seen it. The internet is forever. And you don't protest. Well, a lot of these employees, they work from home. Oh, really? And they couldn't be bothered to come and protest in person? No, they took to social media. They're keyboard warriors. that really need to be ignored. If you don't care enough to get in your car or get on your feet and walk to the gates and hold up a sign, okay, and talk to the media, you really don't care, do you?
Listen to this. The organizers of the walkouts are asking Disney to pull all donations from Florida legislators who have backed the controversial bill, as celebs like Kerry Washington offered their support for Tuesday's walkout. California Governor Gavin Newsom, who had a number of dust-ups with Disney during the first year of the pandemic, tweeted out, Disney employees are doing the right thing today, standing up for their LGBTQ colleagues against the Florida GOP's hateful attacks. California stands with them.
You know, California, the state where most of the entertainment industry is leaving California and going to other states. You know, there's a whole other article I was going to send you and didn't about Star Trek and how Chris Pine is pushing for the next Star Trek movie to be filmed in California because, you know, he wants to stand with California and keep the industry in California and stuff. But all of Star Trek is being filmed in Canada. I mean, a lot of Hollywood is moving, if not to other states, then they're going to the UK. That's how bad things are getting for California. So I care exactly not at all what a politician from California has to say. And I'll tell you something else. This goes back to what we were saying about the previous article. If you work for a company and you don't like their stance on it, the best way to speak is with your feet. You walk out the door and you never go back. Find yourself a job somewhere else. Go. Feel free to find, learn to code, monkey. You know,
you're mean. Iger was so nice. You're mean.
Go work in Silicon Valley, where you know the companies really do support, you know, your political ideologies.
Reminds me of Netflix protests over Dave Chappelle, where they called for 1,000 people, but barely had 100. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, that's the other thing too. Keep in mind. Again, we keep bringing this up. We're talking about a minority of a minority, right? How many people in the country are gay? Okay. And I mean that in a blanket way. All of the alphabets. Okay. We're talking what? Less than 10%. Less than 10%. And that's all gay people or people that identify as gay, right? Or are curious or have tried both or whatever. Okay. The number of people that are politically active and want to go protest and bitch about shit is less than 0.5% of that 10%. So the number of people at Disney that this represents is such a small friggin' minority, it's no surprise that you had one guy in Florida and like half a dozen to a dozen in California. Most of the people that show up for these things don't even work for Disney. They're people with other political reasons for trying to stir shit up.
I was expecting a certain organization to pop up there that likes to, wear black and do some damage, right? Spray painting and whatnot.
Yeah, things aren't going so well for them lately. So
I guess they were stuck in Portland, though. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
The traffic from Portland.
Either that or they're busy knocking over trains in another part of California.
So, after... moving right along.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So all kinds of good news for the happiest place on earth.
This was a bad week for Chapek, though. Good night, Horizon Talker.
Yeah, he kind of made his own.
I'll check out your video.
And I don't know how much of that is his own fault and how much of that was his being told to do that. Whoever's decision it was to apologize was stupid.
The only thing I'll say, I think when the mob is coming after you, you do feel that pressure and you want the mob to go away, and it may be a knee-jerk thing, but I don't think that's what happened here. Because I know for the average person, that might be why that happens. Like, if you're getting dogpiled on, you may not be thinking rationally and thinking apologizing might send them away. It doesn't work that way, though. But
right.
For Chapek's instance, though, I think he got some bad advice. I don't know. Whether that was bad advice on purpose or the person giving it didn't know any better, I don't know.
But simple rule of thumb, best way to deal with this kind of stuff, if anyone asks your opinion, oh, so someone has a problem with me? Okay. No, I have no opinion. They have a problem with me. I have nothing to say about it. Done.
Interesting. Okay, moving right along. Strap on a proton pack and Ghostbusters trailer for Ghostbusters Spirit Unleashed video game. Don't know if you got a chance to watch the trailer for this game or not.
I have, and I've seen a couple of playthroughs from both the point of view of a Ghostbuster. You can play as both a Ghostbuster or as a ghost. It's
I've never. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No. You exactly what you were going to say. Go ahead.
The Friday 13th game, like you can play as Jason or you can play as a camp counselor.
Right.
It's one of those online multiplayer type games. It looks
right.
Like
you get to play as a team of camp counselors, or you play as Jason, and you're playing. You're playing on a team against Jason or Jason against the team. Right.
Yeah.
Same thing here. You're playing as the ghost, or you're playing as the Ghostbusters, and it's interactive. It is. It's going to be same kind of thing. You play it online with other people, but the best thing, it's cross-platform. So I could play on PC and you could play on your
Xbox.
Sure, whatever. I don't know what they are. I was going to say Atari.
Dude.
And we could be on the same team, or you could be playing Slimer and I could be trying to bust you, or whatever the case is.
Atari's not coming back, dude. Neither is television, but we talked about that a couple weeks ago. Anyway.
To me, all these consoles are Atari. Kind of like, all overnight services are FedEx.
And they call me the boomer.
Yeah, right?
See, all the consoles were Nintendo when I was growing up. And then, of course, I guess then it became PlayStation. That was the common term. Okay, after months of rumors and speculation, Alphonic has finally confirmed the existence of a brand new Ghostbusters video game set to release Q4 of this year. Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed is a brand new 4 versus 1 multiplayer game that'll let you take control of a customizable would-be Ghostbuster or instead play as a ghost. Find the full reveal trailer photos and press release below. Lakewood, Colorado, March 22nd, 2022. Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed, the 4 versus 1 Hunt or Haunt supernatural charge video game from the asymmetrical multiplayer experts at Alphonic. Rolls out the Ecto 1 in Q4 2022 for PC, Epic Game Stores, on the Epic Game Store for PC, PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox Series X, S, and Xbox One. And it says, put on a proton pack, grab a ghost trap, and monitor the trusty PKE meter as a Ghostbusters team of 4 brave souls pursuing ghastly ghosts, terrorizing public locations, work together to find the ghosts, blast them with streams from the particle thrower to tether the slimy foe in place and shut the trap at the perfect moment. Keep citizens calm and corral the ghosts before the environment gets too haunted. Play as a ghost, scaring unsuspecting citizens at various locations. You ain't afraid of no Ghostbuster thanks to the ability to fly and teleport between rifts, possess objects lying around each room to sneak by roaming Ghostbusters and frighten passerbyers. If that doesn't work, sliming and summoning ghoulish minions will haunt each map to complete as one of multiple ghosts with different abilities. It'd be funny if you could get like a clown statue and move around as a clown.
Oh gosh, I wouldn't be surprised.
Or a dummy or something. Yeah,
there's if this is successful, you better believe there's going to be some cool DLC for this.
Oh sure, and I mean it's mainly a multiplayer game. They said you can play it offline with bots. Mm-hmm. But it looked neat. I like the trailer. This was what Ernie Hudson was talking about. Remember when he said, "Oh, I can't talk about the game. Never mind." That he was doing voiceover work for a game. I think it was this, and Dan Aykroyd's in it too. You can go talk to Dan Aykroyd.
That's the great thing, and they've got they're very stylized, right? Not stylized quite like the real Ghostbusters, but kind of like animated, stylized of the characters that you saw in Ghostbusters Afterlife. But you've got, Dan Aykroyd, a cartoon character of him.
Yeah,
at Ray's bookstore where you can go and get some information, go read Tobin's Spirit Guide and stuff like that. Yeah.
And Ernie Hudson's like the new CEO of this Ghostbusters outfit.
Yep.
He's handing out the assignments, and I guess Aykroyd, Ray's there to give you the info on the ghost you have to attack or what you have to do. I think he even rolls out Tobin's spirit guide, right?
Yep.
Did we see that in the trailer? So it looks neat. I mean, I don't get as much into the multiplayer games, but this is your bag. This looks like a lot of fun. In fact, I think Rambling Canuck's wife does streams with multiplayer games, right?
Yeah, and you know what?
Yeah.
Now that you mention that, I'm probably going to have to reach out to her and ask her if she's planning on getting in on this.
Get on the Ghostbusters.
I'm guessing that unfortunately what's probably going to happen is for both like me and Netter to play it, we'd probably have to buy 2 copies of it. I don't know. We'll see.
Actually, I wonder if you have you have to get it through the Epic Games Store on PC, so I don't know how that works, but
yeah,
I don't think it'll be available through Steam, but I wonder if you could load it up on 2 of your own PCs. It might be possible. You never know.
Well, my thought is though, if I'm logged in, then someone else couldn't log in for the same game.
Perhaps right. But so it looks like Dan Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson have been a little busy. Apparently, so has Bill Murray.
Yeah. So Bill Murray's not necessarily going to be part of this game, but he's got his own thing going on.
Why, Bill? Why? And I don't even know
because it's Bill Murray. Yeah, this is good.
This is something Venkman would do.
It does strike me as a very Venkman thing to do.
It'd be funny if in like the sequel he said, like in a few years if this NFT thing goes bust and they have in a Ghostbusters movie, I have to come work for your company because I lost everything on the NFT speculation market.
That would be funny.
If they did a meta thing like that. Oh no, Bill.
And then you have Ernie Hudson's character saying, "Venkman, I told you not to invest in that. I told you."
Bill Murray is finally ready to talk about all those Bill Murray stories, but in standard Bill Murray fashion, he's not going to reveal his past musings in a conventional way. The enigmatic and beloved Caddyshack and Ghostbusters actor is partnering with viral photo site and streaming company The Chive to enter the NFT space with a line of blockchain collectibles that will tell verified Murray tales. Each token in the official Bill Murray NFT 1000 will have a unique graphic of Murray and accompanying text of a brief anecdote about the actor that is either personally that he is either personally revealed to the company or has verified from previous published material. As Chive Media Group co-founder John Resig tells it, I asked Bill's thoughts about all the Bill Murray stories swirling about. Bill gave a surprisingly candid answer. I like them just fine. I was even present for a few. Bill leaned in with that mischievous twinkle in his eye. But there are more stories out there, better stories. I asked Billy why he hadn't decided to tell them to fill in the missing pieces of the mythology. The timing has never been right, nor has the storytelling vehicle. I don't want to film a documentary, write an autobiography. Social media is for the birds. Still, I wish most people would understand how much I like fresh eggs laid daily. That last bit is a reference to one of Murray's stories in the collection. A sample Bill Murray story posted Tuesday was about Murray's phone. It appears to be an 8-year-old BlackBerry classic. He nicknamed the relic Bill Urry. Why? The M key doesn't work. Oh, I see. If you receive the text from Bill in the last 5 years, the M's are omitted. Considering Bill prefers texting to talking, that's a lot of missing M's. Note the image below is not the MFT. Okay, that's from the article if you look at it.
That's funny.
The project represents a potential savvy entry into the crowded NFT marketplace, as each token isn't merely a celebrity image, but also has a narrative attached by one of Hollywood's most secretive icons. The Hollywood Reporter toured the Chive's offices Wednesday and got a peek at some of the Murray NFTs in progress. In addition to documenting some of his encounters with fans and fellow celebrities, the tales ranged from professional topics such as discussing a role he turned down, to philosophical Murrayisms, to his uncommon pastimes and quirks. Together, they form an impressionistic summation of a celebrity who's always been difficult to precisely define and pin down. Some of the actor's most publicized tales will remain unaddressed, however, to preserve some air of mystery.
You know me, I don't even really understand these NFTs, so
I keep wondering if I buy the NFT, do I do I own Bill Murray's history? Can he not tell that story again? And I'm like, no, you own a copy of the receipt of one of his stories that I don't know how these things work. And maybe I shouldn't even bother picking this article up. But you know what I'm reminded of? I think there was a Twilight Zone episode or an Outer Limits where some guy was able to go into a shop and sell his memories.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever saw this episode, and he goes
Yeah,
in and it's like, I want to sell. Okay, well, there's a big demand for birthdays. You want to sell your third grade birthday party to us? Yeah, sure. And he gets money, and they remove the memory from his head, and somebody else can get the memory now of his third day birthday party. Then like,
Yeah.
oh, big first kiss, big deal. Can you sell us that memory? We'll give you a lot of money. And eventually he's selling all of his memories, and he starts realizing that he has this money, but he doesn't have his memories, and it's he wants his memories back, and then he buys them, but he has to buy other people's memories because he can't get his own back. And it's just, that's sort of what this is making me think of. But this is like weird dystopian future stuff.
Well, it's certainly, it seems to me they're certainly trying to bring about this kind of a dystopian future. There's this very, and this is why I'm constantly saying own physical media, right? I keep talking about, if you own digital downloads, they can always take that away from you. They can reach into your computer and they can edit it. They can tell you no longer, we're ending this license. That's part of our agreement with you. You don't actually own this thing. Whereas if you own physical media offline, you can play it on your own standalone computer. You can listen to the music, whatever. And it's the same thing here. They're trying to take information, and they're trying to take digital information and make it unique as a license, right? Well, here's the problem. Everyone's pointed this out. If it's a picture, it's a digital picture, it's as reproducible as anything else. No, it's not original. No, you don't own the license to it. But if you want to use it as your backdrop, you can share it with all your friends and they can use it as their backdrop. Nothing they can do about that, right? A story like this, you're going to tell me that you can't, buy one of these NFTs, get a story about Bill Murray, and then share it with everybody? You can tell it on Geeky Geezers, and we all know the story. No, we don't own any license to it, but you can't own information like that.
I had this weird thought pop in my head. There was this European actress, Edwige Fenech, that was her name. And I like to watch a lot of these Italian horror movies. And this one, there was this guy kind of stalkier. He would keep saying, "You belong to me." And I used to joke, well, if I ran into her, my accent would turn to mid-Atlantic, and I would start saying to Edwige that you belong to me as well, because she's a very lovely, lovely woman. So I think Edwige Fenech needs to make NFTs so I can buy Edwige Fenech and say, "You belong to me now."
There you go.
Oh no! Now I'm thinking no! Now I'm thinking about all the women, the OnlyFans type people selling.
Oh God!
Oh no! Dude, I just said it out loud. That was stupid of me.
No, it was.
I could have made bank. I could have teamed up. Oh no!
I mean, it's bad enough you got women out there selling their undergarments.
You can have an NFT of her or
jars of their flatulence and stuff. I mean, now they're going to be Oh no, man.
You know what kills me? You know what NFTs would be perfect for? This whole technology powering NFTs.
What's
when you
that?
buy a digital movie instead of a physical one.
Uh-huh.
That way I get to own this digital copy I bought, and I can sell this digital copy to somebody else, so I own the digital copy rather than the company basically lending it out to me.
Yeah.
Which is sort of what that is. Even with
but you see, that defeats the whole purpose of why they do that. They want to be able to take it away from you, and you don't own it, right?
Stupid.
It's that whole New World Order thing. You will own nothing and you will be happy.
Yeah, how great is that going right now?
Well, nobody's happy. I'll give you that much.
HBO Max.
That's your thing, man.
I like HBO Max, except the original content on it. I like the old movies.
You were the one who was always saying HBO Max.
They put the Dirty Harry movies back on there. By the way, tune in for Tuesday on Mr. Mastic's channel for Culture Fortress, where I will talk about the Dirty Harry movies.
You know where else you can see Dirty Harry? in your own library if you own physical media. Just saying.
We have a set of them, but you know how sometimes these discs they wear out. Even if I've
So
cleaned
make a
them
copy
100
and watch the
times.
copy.
I
It's fair use. That's what fair use is for, my friend.
I own the special DVD box set that came with the replica of the of the map tracing Scorpio and a fake Dirty Harry badge, which I should keep around so I can fly. It's way too small, but it's kind of funny. Anyway, HBO Max and Discovery Plus will combine after Warner Media's merger with Discovery. The ever-expanding streaming wars will contract ever so slightly when Warner Media's pending $43 million merger with Discovery goes through. On Monday, it was revealed that the two companies plan to combine their respective streaming services, HBO Max and Discovery Plus, when the companies unite. The news, spotted by Variety, was revealed by Discovery CEO Gunnar Wiedenfels at Deutsche Bank's 30th Annual Media, Internet, and Telecom Conference. Weidenfels is set to become CFO of the combined company, which will be called Warner Brothers Discovery. It is unclear, however, what the new company might name the combined service or how much of it might change. Warner Media's HBO Max starts at $10 per month for an advertising-supported version, or $15 per month for an ad-free option. Discovery's Discovery Plus starts at $5 a month with ads and $7 a month for ad-free streaming. HBO Max is the larger of the two services, with current parent AT&T revealing in January that the service plus TV channel HBO ended 2021 with 73.8 million subscribers. Discovery ended the year at 22 million subscribers. Yeah, but I'm wondering, cost Discovery has per what HBO has, if they're doing better. What do you think?
Well,
there's a lot of those like home improvement shows and like My Mom Was a Serial Killer type things, just
yeah, exactly. But no, the ultimately we're talking about the merger of two companies, right? And they're putting their content together. This should not be, a surprise to anyone. In fact, what's a surprise is when a company doesn't do this. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of companies not do this.
Variety notes that while Weidenfels would not disclose the pricing for the combined service, he did say that the company's plans to have ad-supported and ad-free versions. The executive also said the company will offer same bundle of the two services at first, while it decides how to best merge the platforms. Disney does the same as with Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus. Okay, so first they're going to bundle. So when are they going to merge?
I don't know. I didn't see dates there, but they haven't
figured it out yet.
And this is kind of following up on something I was talking about last week, right? Disney should have done this a long time ago when they got a hold of 20th Century, right? Everything that they got in that merger should be on Disney Plus, and everything that Disney owns, everything that's in the so-called Disney Vault, should be on Disney Plus. Everything that's ever been on the Disney Channel should be on Disney Plus. Everything that was ever on Disney Kids should be on Disney Plus. Everything that Hulu has a license to should be on Disney Plus. And I don't care if they change the name, Disney Plus / Hulu, make it a 2-tier service or a 3-tier where you get family-friendly Disney and 20th Century Hulu and pay more for the two of them together. They'd be raking in the dough right now, but they haven't done that. And then I see this, I'm like, okay, somebody's got brains. This is news. Why? I saw this and I'm like, this would have been news if they weren't doing this, in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, Connie, have a good night. Heading out. Cousin needs help with something. Thank you for what you do. Oh, thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Okay, so are you excited about this merger? Will this be the final selling point for you to get HBO Max plus Discovery?
No, I'm still not interested. But I mean, I do think from a business standpoint, it's a good thing that they're doing.
Here's what I do want to say. I think HBO Max, even though they need to do better with this, at least for the Warner's back catalog, there's a pretty decent selection on there.
Mm-hmm.
And I know own physical media, but if you can't afford to own the physical media right now, if you do the subscription, you get a bunch of old content on there, which is pretty neat. So I'm just saying objectively, I use a lot of these different streaming services, and HBO Max, despite my many issues with Warner Brothers, and you know me, you can listen to our stream from Friday to hear me and everybody else complaining about Warner Brothers. The outlay of the streaming service is actually pretty good, and there is actually a lot of content on there. There are a lot of the old all those old DC cartoons, including Super Friends, they're on there. It's a lot of stuff on there.
Yep.
All right. So next article, the real Mission Impossible saying no to Tom Cruise.
Yeah, this is actually kind of interesting.
I'm kind of curious. People in the chat, do you like Tom Cruise or not? We haven't actually talked much about Tom Cruise on this channel since we started, have we?
He's a character.
He's a polarizing figure. But I do find him an interesting Hollywood actor. I think he's one of the last big movie stars we have.
Yeah. He one thing I will say about him that I really do respect, how he pushes to do his own stunts.
Oh yeah.
And it's friggin' amazing what he does. I mean, I think more than any Western actor, I mean, he's kind of like our version of Jackie Chan in some ways.
Yeah.
I mean, insane what he's doing.
He is very professional, very dedicated to the movie making business. Now, I'm not going to say I've always agreed with everything he said, but when it comes to movie making, he usually, I'll be blunt, when that Mummy movie came out, I thought it would be good because Tom Cruise was in it, and I thought he was very careful, especially when he's getting older, about what projects he was going to lend himself to. So I don't know how that turned into the disaster that it did, but I was actually had high hopes, and I was like, okay, setting it in modern times, that makes more sense than trying to go, back to the 30s like the last one. It may work, and then no, it didn't. It didn't work at all.
I kind of had a different take on that. When I saw he was doing the Mummy movie, I knew it was going to suck, despite him being in it. I think the only reason he took that role was because maybe part of the deal was he gets a quantity of tannin leaves to try and, stay young forever.
Funny. He's in great shape for his age, I have to say that. He is, I mean, he probably does everything he can to look as young as he does. But anyway, investors who heard Tom Cruise speak via video at Paramount's February 15th investors event must have come away thinking his relationship with the company was a harmony. Calling Sherry Roadstone his dear friend, he lavished praise on the studio and noted his over 37-year relationship with Paramount that I'm very proud and very grateful for. Yes, because he's a professional.
Yep.
And whatever grievances, he's not going to be stupid enough to air them out in public.
Exactly.
The audience would never suspect that the infuriated star had lawyered up a year earlier when the studio notified him that Mission Impossible 7 would have a 45-day theatrical window, far shorter than his usual 3-month run, before streaming on Paramount Plus. It's a fight that remains unresolved as the parties agreed to postpone the battle until the film is finished, which it isn't. Cruise has balked at getting it done until he's put a great deal of Mission Impossible 8 in the can. That wasn't the only point of friction, as Paramount flailed for the material to pump up its fledgling streaming service. Would Cruise allow his longtime studio home to develop a Days of Thunder series for the streamer? That idea was strangled in its cradle. The idea of developing a Mission Impossible series was a no-go too, even though the property had begun life in the 1960s as a CBS show. I don't know how I feel about this, because these probably make interesting television shows. At the same time, seeing how Paramount Plus has handled its other television properties, I'm not necessarily blaming him on this. Mission Impossible 7's release date has been pushed 4 times. It's now set for July 2023. By holding on to the film as a work in progress while working on the 8th, Cruise and his writer-director Christopher McQuarrie ensure that Paramount won't have much luck imposing budget restrictions on what is allegedly the final installment in the franchise. It also gives Cruise, who has creative control flexibility with respect to the cliffhanger ending of Mission Impossible 7. With hundreds of millions on the line, says a knowledgeable source, Cruise and McQuarrie take a perhaps surprisingly improvisational approach to filmmaking. McQuarrie's first encounter Cruise on the 2008 film Valkyrie, which McQuarrie co-wrote and co-produced. He started collaborating on the Missions movies when he went to work on the script for the fourth installment, 2011's Ghost Protocol, mid-production. He directed the fifth, 2015's Rogue Nation, during which he figured out the third act only in the middle of shooting. The sixth installment, 2018's Fallout, involved more of the same budget fracturing spontaneity. The unpredictable approaches Cruise exercising the power he's accrued from bringing $3.6 billion in box office, starring as Ethan Hunt for over 3 decades. Mission Impossible movies have been fairly successful. Did you know that Mission Impossible 2, I believe that was the top movie of 2000 when it came out? That was the top grossing movie.
I don't doubt it. Yeah.
Yeah. The notion that a studio can control spending on a Cruise movie is dismissed by executives who have been in the trenches with him. One says the studio can only hope to influence Cruise and McQuarrie. Tom looks at the money he delivers to the studio, says another. Why wouldn't you go do whatever you want? Who's going to tell you not to? These executives say Cruise is driven by his own perfectionism. It's not always in the best interest of the budget, but he is incredibly detailed and willing to put in an enormous amount of time and effort on every aspect, says a source on Mission Impossible 7. The guy does give every ounce of his being to this endeavor, claims another. The still unfinished Mission Impossible 7 has already hit a breathtaking $290 million budget with tax incentives. Cruise and McQuarrie did a little work on 8 and 7 as 7 got underway, enough to say they had started the film, but shooting on 8 is underway now. Sources say Cruise has persuaded Brian Robbins, the new president and CEO of Paramount Pictures, to give him more money to finish the 7th film and make the 8th, arguing with some justification that inflation has driven up expenses. In 2006, Cruise hit a low with the $398 million gross of Mission Impossible 3 after he dinged his reputation with his appearances on Oprah and the Today Show. I guess it was the jumping on the couch stuff, right?
Yeah.
But he had repaired his relationship with his fans, and Fallout was the highest grossing movie of the series. The 2018 release pulling in $791.6 million worldwide, more than $100 million higher than the previous entry. You would make Mission Impossible 7 and 8 even if you had a full slate studio veteran pulls out. They weren't crazy expensive by the standards of Marvel of Bond. The sixth film will cost about $180 million with rebates, but the relentless drive for bigger stunts and more locations kept pushing the cost of the films. Then Mission Impossible 7 became one of the first major productions to run headlong into the pandemic. On February 24, 2020, just days before the filming was to begin in Venice, Paramount announced that it was shutting down the production out of an abundance of caution. According to a source, Cruise was then still in London, stricken with an illness that was not believed to be the beer bug, as they say.
Yeah.
The production moved to Rome only to stop again March 9th when the Italian government locked down the country. Cast and crew resumed work in July after British authorities gave the production special dispensation to skip a mandatory 14-day quarantine. Yikes. Because these Mission Impossible movies, they take place all over the world. They are very much, in my opinion, maybe the replacement Bond series.
Yeah.
Because how the Bond movies have come. We were talking about that last week. And I've actually greatly enjoyed this series. Like the worst of them is still good. Like, I don't think I've seen any of the Mission Impossible movies that I consider bad. I know some people didn't like 2, but I have a soft spot for 2. But after Cruise called, the country's Minister of Culture, Norway, also gave permission to shoot without observing the country's 10-day quarantine requirement. He called the Minister of Norway.
Mm-hmm.
Or the culture of Norway, at least. Back in Italy, the 2020, the film shut down a third time after a dozen people on set tested positive for the coronavirus. They said it. According to a new source, one of the Cruise's security guards had a gathering in his hotel room that also led to some cases. The production moved to Venice, only to shut down a fourth time because of positive tests. And then in December 2020, with the production shooting outside of London, the Sun got hold of an audio tape of Cruise dressing down the crew, supposedly after he saw a couple of people standing too close together, framing the production as a model for the industry. He said, "I'm on the phone with every effing studio at night, insurance companies, producers, and they're looking at us and they're using us to make their movies. We are creating thousands of jobs, you MFers." He added, "If I see you do it again, you're effing gone." The overall public reaction seems supportive, with an article in Atlantic calling it cathartic, even comforting air crews call out for safety. I don't see that exactly what's going on.
Yeah, no, I agree.
This is what's happening here. If you're on a movie set, even when you're making a small movie, I know this from some firsthand experience just from student productions and everything, and I'm sure it even gets worse on bigger productions. There will be yelling. Don't take the yelling personally, even when they say you're gone, you'll never work, because like that night or even a day later, you'll be out for drinks, okay, with the same person yelling at you. It's not it's hard to explain. It's a very intense environment because you do not want the movie to fail. There's a lot of money on the line. Murphy's Law is in great effect whenever you're making a movie. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And I'm sure he's thinking, all we need is more tests and then people to test positive. And all we need to find out is that we weren't following these severe safety protocols. Whether we agree with them or not, I don't know. But I think it comes more from that. We don't need more shutdowns on this thing. That's what I'm saying.
That's exactly right. And we said it at the time when we commented on it. He had a lot of money in it. He's producing it.
Yeah.
And in order to get the movie made, he needs to abide by the law, right? And everyone in the film needs to. This was never a commentary on whether we think it's right or wrong or should or shouldn't be wearing masks or keeping distance or other. It's what we need to do in order to get our business done, okay? In order to get paid, okay? To keep our jobs, okay? If you can't do that, leave, because other people want to work and make money.
And I'll be blunt. These Mission Impossible movies are good old-fashioned, good summer Hollywood blockbusters. They aren't like some of the stuff we get from Disney and other places. They're just a lot of fun. They're intense. The stunt work's great, and I haven't immensely enjoyed this series. I'll be honest with you. Even with the one that was directed by J.J. Abrams, even that wasn't terrible. Though I do think it's the worst one. But that of Philip Seymour Hoffman as a villain, which was kind of interesting. I do miss Philip Seymour Hoffman. But anyway, you know who I love in this series? Simon Pegg. You know Simon Pegg?
I did not know he was in it.
He had a cameo in part 3. He was like the nerdy tech guy. And then in part 4, Ghost Protocol, he says, I've been cleared for field duty. And it's funny seeing his interactions with Tom Cruise, like Ethan Hunt versus Benji, because they're like so different, and the chemistry as they bounce off each other. Because of course, Simon Pegg's more, I don't want to say he's like the nerdy guy, but he's like the unconventional field agent. Do you understand? So seeing him paired with Ethan Hunt, it's funny, and they've had him in everyone since, and he's and they've had other characters show up here and then too, like Ving Rhames will pop up, and sometimes they'll have like some people that they go missing for a couple movies and they pop back in. Like Ving Rhames was missing for a while, then he came back into the series. The guy who plays Hawkeye, he's been in them too. So it's got a good rotating cast of people. So anyway, early in 2021, in the midst of these struggles, Guy Annapolis informed Cruise that the film would receive a 45-day theatrical window before moving to Paramount Plus. The studio had to know how unwelcome this news would be. Says an associate, Jim was bridging between what Paramount's Sherry Redstone and President CEO Bob Bakish wanted, and what Jim felt was the right thing to do, which was to protect the relationship with Cruise. Part of the reason Jim had gone is that Sherry and Bob thought they could wave a magic wand and persuade the star to accept a shortened window. Sure enough, Cruise was having none of it, seeing himself rightly as Paramount's most important, not to mention longest-term partner. He was said to be furious. He had no interest in any of his movies, would play for a day less than his standard 3-month run. For him, 45 days is like going day and date, said a Paramount source. He also felt that setting a date when the movie could be seen on the service would discourage people from going to the theater. And what I think is interesting about this, I suspect these two that were trying to present the 45-day window, I don't know if this was in the article I've read later, but I think someone at Paramount wanted to go day and date.
Yep.
And this was like their compromise, and he was not liking the compromise either. And I have to agree with him too. I don't like day and date. I think it cheapens the movie experience. I like going to the movies to see theatrical features.
I think there's something else to be said here too. A lot of people probably want to draw the comparison between this and the Black Widow lawsuit, right?
Yeah.
You can make that correlation, but I think there's a huge difference here. Okay. we talked about this with the Scarlett Johansson thing. There's some things going on behind the scenes, beyond what we were seeing, and she called it a victory, but in reality, it was, we were right. We proved it in court. Now maybe you should just take the payout and shut up. You know, this is going a little bit differently. This is going to be Paramount, which is, let's face it, they are not Disney. They are not as big as Disney, and they are hurting, right? Going up against not Scarlett Johansson, but let's just say somebody who not only is wealthy in his own right, but has other backing by some big people. And this is going to hurt. Just going, even if Paramount won, okay, and didn't have to pay him out anything extra or whatever, it's going to cost them money that they don't have. Auditor Dredd said, when is Top Gun 2 coming out? When indeed? Every month that film isn't released is money Paramount is losing.
I think they screwed the pooch on that one. Actually, like I said, I think it ended up benefiting Ghostbusters Afterlife during its run. They should have released it. What was that? That was on
what was
in
that?
The fall? It's Veterans Day. Veterans Day in the fall, right?
Something like that.
Yeah,
but what it comes down to is, he's going to have some lawsuits here, and he may or may not win. I don't know, but it's going to hurt Paramount, and Paramount is already hurting. And I don't even want to get into the Star Trek side of things with Paramount, but it'll be real interesting to see where Paramount is in 5 to 10 years, and if they aren't bought up by somebody else. I don't know anything. This is just pure speculation, by the way.
What's this comment? Jennifer Connelly? What's going on about Jennifer Connelly?
Oh, Auditor Dredd and I were talking back and forth about, he was commenting off of my riff on how Tom Cruise is staying eternally young, and he compared him, I don't remember which movie it was, with Cameron Diaz. He looks pretty good compared to Cameron Diaz. I said, yeah, but I want to see A Risky Business too with him and Rebecca De Mornay. She still looks great too. Oh, and he said, yeah. What about Jennifer Connelly?
Well, she's going to be she's going to be in Top Gun too. So
yeah, she is.
Love interest.
If that movie ever gets out there.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I bought the Blu-ray re-release of Top Gun because they remastered it, and there's all interviews with the current stars of Top Gun 2 talking about the original Top Gun, and I'm like, that's great that this is on here. When's 2 coming out? Because I think they were going to release it at the same time.
That might be as close as you get to seeing the movie.
Yeah, because they were going to, like when the new movie came out, they like, oh, here's the 4K edition of Top Gun and remastered Blu-ray, and you can buy this new edition in time for the new movie. And then the new movie missed its window, but they still released the DVD on the same date, and it's. But Cruise is said to be one of the last $1 gross players in the business, so box office streets are key to his compensation. He makes much more from the films than the studio does. A source says Giannopoulos has relied on the advice of Paramount Pictures COO Andrew Gumpert that the studio has the power to shrink MI's Mission Impossible 7's theatrical window. Paramount declined to comment, but language in Cruise's contract said the movie had to be handled in a manner consistent with the previous films. Cruise called his lawyers. Oh boy.
Yep.
Okay.
They do not want this is not Scarlett Johansson they're dealing with. Okay.
No, he's
this
one
is
of the
somebody who knows his contracts. Okay.
I remember Ebert or Roper back in the day. They had a show on the Two Toms, which was Tom Cruise and Tom Hanks, which were like the biggest stars in Hollywood at that point, because everything they were rolling out was a hit. And it's funny that Tom Hanks, unfortunately, like a lot of his movies, like he was not happy about Greyhound going straight to Apple TV Plus. Yep. You couldn't actually go and see that in the theater, and he said he wished that had gotten a theatrical release because he was made for the big screen. It's a great little World War II movie too, but
I predicted this a while back when we started seeing a lot of this streaming and, the coof and all that kind of stuff. I said there's a lot of people that have riders in their contracts that are going to be losing money on this, and watch for the lawsuits to start coming. And, again, I'm right. Here it is. And it's not just the actors. It's even worse for the producers. And you better believe this is going to be some solid 1-2 punches coming in courts about this.
Yep. Okay, but we'll see how this all turns out. This article goes on a bit, but I'm getting tired and I want to get to the last one. But
we can skip the last one if you want. It's not all that.
I'll just do the highlights from it. Man, this article goes on forever. But apparently, Cruise is getting a submarine added to the end of Mission Impossible 7. I trust him, and you know what I'll say? It's funny that there's a lot of spontaneous stuff in these productions because they're well executed. These movies, they're like one part heist movie, one part Bond movie.
They are pure popcorn films. I mean, this is
they're popcorn films, but I don't feel like they're stupid. And the last
one, no, I didn't mean it that way. What I meant was
the way they used to be. Yeah, the way popcorn.
They are very accessible to general audiences, which means they ought to bring in lots of money, and that doesn't happen if you shorten the window.
Yeah, Peg's Benji character is the comic relief element, and you need that in these types of movies because, of course, Ethan Hunt's the serious character, right? So, and he makes Tom Cruise funnier when he's on screen with him. So it's a great movie series. Rebecca Ferguson has now been the latest added, where she's been like a mainstay, the one from Dune, who we talked about a little while back. But all right, so this final article is really for Troy.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said you can skip it if you want.
Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time on it because, I'm getting exhausted. We're already past the 11 o'clock mark.
Do you want me to sum it up real quick?
I just want to read a couple quotes and then you can give me your reaction. Okay?
Yeah.
Honestly, could you take this serious? The man is a PhD candidate.
He's overeducated.
All right, this was supposed to be the D&D portion. I picked that Tom Cruise article up. I'm like, oh man, this is as bad as the Disney article from the beginning. It goes on forever. It's a great article. Read the rest. But the point is, Tom Cruise, interesting character. I am looking forward to the new Mission Impossible. I hate Paramount, but they still make good Mission Impossibles. Heck, I think J.J. Abrams may even still be involved, and they still don't suck, even though he's involved. It's weird. Okay, according to regular North American Simulation and Gaming Association creator author Clayton White, Dungeons & Dragons promotes the concept of race essentialism, or the idea that racial identity determines the path we take in life, because players cannot realistically imagine a completely disconnected reality, and thus are incapable of not drawing comparisons between the game's fictional creatures and real-world races. Now, to be fair, that's the bounding in the comics origin. That might be a little disingenuous, but
you think?
Okay, but he says, okay, this is from the guy's paper, whatever. Racial essentialism at its core, the idea that racial identity determines the path we take in life. And the most egregious of real-world examples, we can point to the absolute disgusting practice of scientific racism, the pseudoscientific produce of empirical evidence that one ethnicity can be biologically inferior to another. I should hope, very obvious problem is that this idea we cannot reasonably attribute individual ability to the knowledge with race. Yes, I would agree with that. We'll argue that the classic tabletop RPG encourages essentialism because it ascribes cultural traits to races and includes physical traits and experiential knowledge based on race. Players must use these core resources to craft characters, and in doing so must engage with an explicitly essentialist universe in which your race determines everything from how far you can run to knowing how to be a blacksmith. Further within the game, D&D encourages assumptions based on racial essentialism. Certain races can be inherently evil, and their actions always pursue goals to cruel intent. Players are trained from the start to expect evil intent from goblins, barbarism from orcs, or kindness from elves. So he goes on to say, though, noting that he had spoken to the wonderful creators from the DMS Guild, an online marketplace for third-party D&D content. Regarding the comments, Whittle recalled that several of these creators had asserted the existence of The existence of a second fantasy world automatically inspires players to draw connections. If the responsibility of the dungeon master writer to lay out how the imagined world does or does not connect to the real world, he continued, before implying that all players would default to making racist comparisons between the game's races and real world peoples without a guiding hand of a properly socially conscious dungeon master. Without the explicit guidance, players are free to imagine their own connections. Um, should I respond to it, or do you want to go first?
Go ahead.
The races he's talking about are races like orcs, goblins, elves, dwarves, gnomes, etc., right?
Right. Exactly.
If you play a human character in the game, you can be any race, ethnicity, though of course the races and ethnicities in D&D may not correspond to the ones in our world, but you could probably have your character be any shade, or
Sure.
they could be, Asian looking or whatnot. So when you're playing a human character, those traits respond to us humans, no matter what skin color or sex or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the other races are just other mythological races from mythologies from Europe and maybe other parts of the world, correct?
Right.
So why am I trying to make a correlation that elves represent a specific group of people in our world, or orcs represent a specific group of people in our world, when that's not what they are?
Yeah, what it comes down to is we have this is no different than putting wheelchair accessibility into dungeons, or a module about going to prom. Okay, it's all this stupid bullshit of trying to bend over backwards and find problems in a campaign world that is completely mutable. It literally, the rule 0 has always been in Dungeons and Dragons. You can change anything about it you want to fit what you want, and this is what I said. You didn't need to add, a module or something to make a dungeon handicap accessible. Any dungeon master could have decided that the person that created that dungeon was in a wheelchair and needed to make it accessible for himself. And that's going to make it accessible to the player character that for whatever reason has not gone to the cleric to have restoration cast on him so he could walk or whatever. I don't know. They're bending over backwards to create straw man arguments.
But here's what I don't understand. Isn't
also,
D&D filled with lore?
It is.
Stories, novels that explain these worlds, in addition to the various books you can buy that explain what
exactly.
This is.
But the rule books are very general. They give you generalities, and that's what they have a problem with. If you describe, how do you describe races in fiction? Okay, if you describe Vulcans or Klingons or Romulans, you speak in generalities. But when you tell those stories, you see that they're very diverse. Okay. When you say Klingons are a warrior race and they're built on honor and da 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 da, okay. But then you tell a story about somebody like Worf, who grew up away from the Klingon Empire, who, has this idealized impression of what Klingons are based on those exact tropes, coming to find out, oh, not all Klingons are honorable. Some Klingons, have a different idea about what honor is.
Yes.
All these legends I was told some of the Klingons don't even believe in those. That's the storytelling, right?
If I'm going from at least the original series canon, weren't the Vulcans and Romulans, didn't they come from the same group in the beginning and they separated?
The Romulans and the Vulcans, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's, but getting back to Dungeons and Dragons, there are generalities, right? I'm sorry, you have to get out of this intersectional, insanity that you're in as a society, and realize that there are some truths that are somewhat universal, right? I mean, there are differences between men and women. I know that's controversial to say these days. Okay. And that doesn't mean that some women can't do some things that men can do and better, but there are generalities. Okay.
like I
And that's
wouldn't want
not
to.
a
I
bad
wouldn't.
thing. And that's not something that is deterministic on any one individual. Okay. But if you are creating a fiction, you want to keep those things in mind. And then if you decide your character is different from the norm, if he is an orc that wants to be, maybe he was raised by humans and he's good-hearted and honorable, and he wants to be a knight of some, you know, order in the human sphere, and he's got to deal with the prejudice among humans because he's an orc, you know. But the orcs all see him as an outcast. He's more human than orc in their opinion. That makes for interesting storytelling, right? It's the breaking of the norms, but there has to be norms in order to break them. This is, in my opinion, this is just a non-story by a mental masturbator in academia who, you know, thinks because he's got letters at the end of his name, he knows everything, and you should just listen to him because, you know, acquiesce to authority.
I don't understand. Part of me wonders if some of the newer player base doesn't understand some of the basics that you can be any kind of human character you want to be, but then there are these other races.
Keep in mind, these are the same people that believe, you know, what they're told by the media. You know, they don't know how to think for themselves. They can't come up with their own stories. They, you know, they just regurgitate what they hear. That's why, you know, all these social or these social science experts are coming out of the woodwork to tell us how virtuous and wonderful Ukraine is and how evil Russia is without knowing any of the history. But you know what? I heard it in the news, and therefore this is what it is. And you know, the storyline from a video game is actually real, you know.
How does everyone view fantasy races like orcs and elves and somehow attribute them to real races? I don't understand this.
Well, in this particular case, Auditor Dread, they're not specifically drawing a correlation between, you know, a fantasy race and a real world race, like they were with the orc thing a while back.
They say that players will, though, so you use the Dungeon Master have to explicitly state, or then you have to
this guy is
break
talking
stereotypes. I don't.
He is talking about a social philosophy that's taught in colleges, like I said, among a bunch of academic mental masturbators, the same kind of people that come up with things like critical race theory and that kind of bullshit, you know, and accept it as fact. Okay, that's the kind of thing we're talking about here.
I don't know. I don't know anymore. This is all very
There's
confusing.
no such thing as differences.
I mean, and there have been, you know, I mean, what's the most famous D&D character from a novel? That was Driss Dior, probably gonna say his name one. Driss Dordan. I'm saying his name.
Yeah, right. the drow elf that
the drow elf. Yes.
Yeah, kind of turns against his people and
there
the only reason I know of him is because in Baldur's Gate there was a cheat where you could call up multiples of him to fight for you.
Oh, that's funny.
He was pretty tough. Problem is that because of the nature of the processors back in those days, you call up a whole bunch of him and they kind of crashes your system because there's too many sprites on screen and your processor can't keep up.
It's just ridiculous. You know that in Japan they're into the RPGs as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of that shows up in a lot of modern anime. Like it's funny how they treat the dark elves in anime though, because of course they're
because
they're very nice looking. Okay.
Well, there's the thing in anime like the Pokemon. There's certain cards that you can't get here in the United States because racial issues are handled very differently in Japan than they are here. Let's just say that. And
I don't know. I think their RPG over there is called Sword World. I think that's what it's called over there.
Cool,
which is an interesting title.
Well,
okay.
I got nothing else to say about that. It's ridiculous.
I don't know. It's like everyone's infantilized and everything. They need hand holding.
Oh yeah,
I don't.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
no one held my hand when I saw Heavy Metal. You got heads getting lopped off and bare breasts flying everywhere, and it was a good time, you know. And nowadays, it's just and it's an
And I
R-rated
happen to
movie.
very
Don't
much
watch
like
it.
bare breasts. Bring me more of them
It's
right
just-
now.
It's funny. It's funny, actually. You know what? There's a scene on the DVD. Did you know the one Queen from the Den short that
Mhm.
was actually animated as part of like a I think like an Arabian Nights type fantasy, but they changed her hairstyle for the Den thing, but they used the same animatics that they made for it. You can see it on the DVD. It's interesting. I don't get it. Anyway, we're done for the night. I think.
Yeah,
Yes,
I just
I'm
wanted to tell
tired.
the the audience, the stream, the chat, however you identify. Thanks for
Yes.
being here and hanging out with us, because as I said when I shared this out on social media, there's nothing else on TV anyway tonight, right?
Is
But
it the Oscars? Is it the Oscars tonight?
oh yeah, and you guys might want to go check if that's a big deal for you. Go check out your social media, find out why Will Smith and Chris Rock are trending right now. That's going to be the big talk for the week.
What?
You'll
Okay.
find that very, very interesting, I'm sure.
I'm curious now. Okay. I wonder if Dune won anything. I know it was up for Best Picture, but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. In
So
fact, there was a I'm a what do you call it? I subscribe to Viva Barnes Law .locals.com.
Don't forget to give to
Yeah, I will. I'll get to that. And Robert Barnes did a culture breakdown on the movies that are up for Best Picture, and I'll be interested to hear what he had to say about that, because I caught a little bit of their live stream before ours, and he had some choice generalities to make about some of those movies. So it'll be
oh
kind of
boy,
interesting.
I'll have to look at that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tuesday, you and I both have Culture Fortress with
Yep.
Mr.
What's your
Match,
topic again?
Dirty Harry,
Oh, you're talking about Dirty Harry on Tuesday
all
too.
the movies, and you're
Okay,
gonna
okay.
do. What are you gonna do? You're gonna do
I am going to do Buck Rogers in the 25th Century.
the original 1970s classic series.
Yep.
Because you had talked. We did that on a good old days a while back, but you didn't talk about it on Culture Fortress. So
Yep.
I think
And
we did it, Lisa. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I think I still insist that is good science fiction, and I feel that there's some interesting story behind that. Kind of like when we talked about Battlestar Galactica, this whole idea that there was this period between the 70s and 80s where things were just a little bit different for just a little while, and I think personally it was because of Star Wars.
Yep.
I think there was this idea that they wanted to do sci-fi TV inspired by Star Wars.
Yeah.
But in order to do what they wanted to do, they would release their pilot episodes as theatrical films. So you would see a cinematic edit of Buck Rogers and Battlestar Galactica. That was a good movie that wrapped up just fine, but then you'd go home, and few months later it'd be it would be the fall lineup would be now this major motion picture comes to TV in a weekly series. And yep, I'll talk a little bit about that. So that's Tuesday.
Blackadder. When was talking about that?
Oh, who's talking about Blackadder?
Blackadder. That was, I remember the Christmas special. I used to watch Blackadder back in the day.
Is that going to be Mr. Matchstick's topic, or is that someone else?
Maybe our British friend might be talking about that.
Oh, good. Okay, that's exciting. Okay,
Wednesday.
So that's
go ahead.
8:30 Eastern on Tuesday. Thanks, Mr. Matchstick.
Wednesday, I will not be on Birdman, but tune in. Big
What good are you then?
No. My mother's birthday. I remember you
priorities,
you had a
man.
similar situation crop up too.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, but it's Mom's birthday. But he will be on with Big Al. They will be talking about. They will be a running commentary on their two favorite Battlestar Galactica episodes from the more recent series. There were some nice looking women on that series. I'm just going to say that. Okay.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I was talking about Katie Sackhoff today.
Oh, she's lovely. Oh,
she is. She really is.
She has a great smile.
And she's got a great personality, you know, on her like YouTube channel. She's actually a really cool person. But I found it interesting because I don't remember how it came up with me and Nanette. She said something about referencing the Mandalorian. This is the way. I said, I wonder if Katie Sackhoff, you know, is at conventions and she ever says, "This is the way. So say we all." Whatever, you know what I mean.
Okay. So Friday, you're gonna have are you gonna be doing you're gonna have a stream? Is it gonna be
Right now I'm planning to do the rest of coupling
Season 1 of
season.
Coupling?
I will limit myself to one martini that Netter's going to make for me.
Dry
So
martini?
yeah, it will be a dry martini.
Okay.
And I can't promise I'll be dry, but you know, I'll keep it more reserved than I did last time. I'm starting to
It
learn
was
my
kind of
limits
funny
here.
though. Okay, and
I'm
then
glad because I you peek behind the curtain, everybody. Netter said you might want to reach out to Aged Boomer. I think you were a little rude to him at the end of the show, and I'm like, oh crap! And I honestly could not remember.
I took it as
stream.
you might have been ready to lose your dinner if you don't.
I might have been. Yeah, I was a little bit. I didn't though. I didn't.
You didn't.
But yeah, I was. Yeah. And in fact, she said that I even closed it with "Good night, ladies." She says, "Is that an automatic thing?" I said, "No, I must have been clear enough to hit that button."
You did the right thing. You hit the button. And then Saturday, Netters Network, correct?
Saturday on Netter's Network, we will be watching. It was another Robin Williams film, Birdcage.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. And then Sunday back with Geeky Geezers. And no more long articles that I'm reading forever. They were good articles, though. I recommend you read them on your own.
But in fairness, that is why you give them the link so they can read them on their own.
I know, and I did edit them down, and it's still long. It's like that Tom Cruise one kept going. I'm like, we get the gist of it. It's a good article. I'm learning a lot of things I was curious about behind the scenes while the whole pandemic was going on. Like, what is going on? And now we're finding out finally. So a lot of stuff is now coming to light that we were speculating on like a year ago. So. Okay, but y'all have a good week. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Take care.
Bye-bye.